This episode is sponsored by yet another company that I truly stand behind, and that is Levels. And Levels is going to be offering you, the Behind the Shield podcast audience, a discount that I will tell you about at the end of this introduction. Now, before I even dive into what Levels does, when I had a conversation with their CEO and founder, Josh Clemente, he underlined such an important topic. So many of us rely on visits to our physicians to tell us how we are doing, and that is so backward. I am an absolute believer in putting autonomy back into the hands of the individual so they can take care of their own health. Now, what Levels does is it gives us the metrics so we can see exactly how everything is internally. So they help people improve their health through continuous glucose monitoring, comprehensive lab tests, and metabolic coaching. Now, through their 3 levels that they offer, they have programs that focus on weight loss, heart health, and glucose stability. I've now been through this program twice, and I'll kind of illustrate what it will look like. So you make an initial consultation with your Levels coach. You wear a continuous blood sugar monitor for 1 month. You'll complete a lab panel, and I did it through Quest Diagnostics. A clinician with Levels will then analyze your results and give you an action plan. That's when you can then start hitting your own health goals and in real time track your own progress. And then depending on the level you subscribe to, there's also a second blood work so you can now see how you're doing 6 months later. Now, by combining AI data, AI-powered insights, and human coaching together, 80% of Levels members improve their biomarkers. Now, as I mentioned, Levels is offering you, the audience of the Behind the Shield podcast, $100 off your first order if you use the promo code SHIELD at levels.com. And if you're interested in getting Levels for your department, email Josh Clemente, the founder and CEO of Levels, at josh@levels.com. And if you want to hear the origin story and so much more about this incredible company, listen to my interview with CEO and founder Josh Clemente on episode 1159 of the Behind the Shield podcast. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show veteran firefighter, instructor, and entrepreneur, Tony Ortiz. So in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from growing up in a firefighter family, his own journey into the fire service, our experience together at paramedic school, his time in fire prevention, the importance of firefighter fitness, his near decade of running every single day, the incredible local mentorship program, the 2472, raising standards in the fire service, leadership, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. And one more side note, I did a collaboration with the cartoonist Paul Combs this week. If you haven't seen that piece, go to Fire Engineering or Paul's site to read that article on firefighter shifts and the proactive solutions. So with that being said, I introduce to you Tony Ortiz. Enjoy. Well, Tony, I want to start by saying welcome to my home. We have known each other since paramedic school, which we'll dive into in a little while. But I want to start by saying welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this show. I've listened to it for a long time. I remember you first telling me that you were going to do this podcast, and I thought you were crazy at first. And you were leaving the fire service, and I was like, wow, what a big step. But now, after how many episodes are you at now?
Almost 1,200 now.
1,200 episodes. It has been, I think, a gift to the fire service. And for me, it's been, super enjoyable to hear the type of people that you've had on. And for me to be one of those folks, it's truly an honor. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't know why we haven't done this sooner, but it's so weird with this. I always tell people that when we're supposed to sit down, it will suddenly pop in my head. It's just one of those God moments or whatever you want to call it.
No, that's cool.
But lots to talk about. Well, for people listening, if you were at home at your department, where on planet Earth would we be finding you today?
You are finding me today in your living room. And I live in Ocala, and I work for the Ocala Fire Department.
Beautiful. Well, let's start at the very beginning of your story then. So tell me where you were born, and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
All right. So I was actually born in Hollywood, Florida, and then shortly we moved to a little small town outside of Ocala called Bellevue. So kind of grew up in Bellevue. I am the oldest of two, so I have a younger sister. But what I do have is a tremendously big family. I've got about over 20 cousins that I was really close to when I was growing up. I was the oldest one, but my mom and dad both were from pretty big families. So they both had 7 brothers and sisters. So my entire life was filled with going to birthday parties, family get-togethers, and it was just chaos. So big Spanish family, as you can imagine what that's like. So I didn't have just one mom. I had every mom. All my aunts were like a second mom. But it was cool because when you grow up in that kind of family, you realize how important it is to, respect your elders, and every single member of your family has the right to just, put you in your place. So you kind of learn how to fit into a community with having a family like that. And being the oldest, I always kind of felt like it was my responsibility to kind of look after my cousins, and then also to kind of teach them the way and give them a hard time. Being the oldest is always kind of a blessing and a burden. And I think that growing up, that kind of shaped my outlook on life now. So it was really, really a cool thing. Yeah.
Where are your family from lineage-wise?
So my mom's family's from Cuba and my dad's Puerto Rican.
Okay.
So, but they hail from Long Island, New York. So everybody was living up there in kind of late 70s. And I guess they were doing a bunch of signs and said, move to Central Florida. Property's really cheap. And they didn't believe it. So they came down here and checked it out. And sure enough, it was. And that's kind of the origin story of how we all kind of got here. So,
I think there's so much value in a lot of these cultures that still value that multi-generational household. Mm-hmm. And I was just talking to Rick Mountcastle today, who's the real lawyer from the OxyContin Purdue case, but then now he's done a lot in the nursing home side, investigating and suing them because of the abuse. And one of the solutions obviously is, older relatives living with family, being taken care of there rather than being put in a facility. You talked about this massive family. What was that element like? Were you having multiple generations living in some of these households?
Yeah, I think we still do. I actually have a grandmother who's still alive. She just turned 90, and she's fit as a fiddle and sharp as a tack. And she lives with my aunt right now. She's lived with my uncle. She's lived with my other aunt. So, and then I had another grandmother who just passed away, and the same thing. It was, they never were in a nursing home or anything like that. It's always just been, they were being taken care of by family. So yeah, I think that's been something in our family that's always been valuable, is that, you take care of your people in your family. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about sports and exercise? What were you playing and doing back then?
So, yeah, I was just your average kid. I lived in a neighborhood that was they called it farmers' homes back then. And it was kind of like low income homes, first time home buyers and stuff like that. So there was a ton of kids always in our neighborhood. So I would play in the the neighborhood all the time. We'd play baseball, football, all of that stuff. I played, rec sports. So I would go out and I played like Little League baseball, and I played football for MCYFL, which is kind of the place here. I played Big Sun soccer. So, growing up, I played all kinds of sports. When I got into high school, played a little bit, but didn't really follow up on any of it. Just kind of fell off. Was interested more in like music and stuff like that. So, I didn't play much in high school. And then when I got on with the fire department, then I became a Olympic athlete, a firefighter Olympics athlete. So I went to the Olympics. We played soccer there, got crushed by the guys from Miami-Dade. We played some softball and fishing and all that stuff. So I can definitely say I'm a firefighter Olympic athlete.
Olympian.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm Olympian.
What was Bellevue like back then? Because as we sit here now, I know one of the busiest stations in Marion County is Station 18. So obviously there's some desperation in the area. But what was it like in your experience when you were younger?
It was cool. Small. I feel like it's grown a little bit. I know they have like a Chamber of Commerce there now, and I've gone to some of their events, and every time I go, there's a guy who's kind of in charge of the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, Joe Reichel, and I always tell him, man, I love that this is happening here in Bellevue because I love Bellevue, We used to go to the movie theater over there. There was a few restaurants kind of in their little Highway 441 area, so not a lot going on, but there was enough to where, you could go shopping, you could go watch a movie, you could do some stuff. And as I went to high school there, I went to Bellevue High School. It was like one of the very first classes to go through, and the high school was new to the area. So that was another kind of like cool thing that happened while I was in there. And it, so I've kind of seen it over the years grow up. And I remember, probably get into this, but my dad was a firefighter for Ocala, and part of the things they used to do back then is the Ocala firefighters and some of the Marion County firefighters would get together and they would do different trainings together out there. So I remember going to Bellevue, right where the city hall is, and they were doing some type of like firefighter challenge training out there. So I remember that as a kid, and that was really cool to kind of see the guys out there, putting on the air packs and doing I don't even remember what they were doing. I have to talk to Dad and figure out exactly, but I was probably pulling lines and see who could do the fastest or something like that. So yeah, Bellevue was cool.
I actually went to Bellevue High School a few times because Ty was running. So cross country would be there, I think, or at least against them, and then also track.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I ran track out there. It was kind of, when they first opened the school, they just needed everybody. I was not that good. They were just like, we don't have enough kids. We need anybody who can run. Like, all right, I'll run. So it was a cool time.
When you reflect back before you were wearing uniform, what were the pros and cons of being the son of a firefighter back then?
Man, so yeah. I remember being proud to like tell people that my dad was a fireman. Like that was kind of a cool thing to say. Like when they would ask you like, hey, what does your parents do and stuff like that. I was always proud to say that he was a fireman because I thought it was a pretty cool profession. It really wasn't till almost when I was out of high school that I even thought about it as a possible career. But one of the things that I do remember, and I think back now, is that, they're as awesome as that was to have, a father that you were proud of what he did. There were a lot of times when, I can remember Dad not being there at Thanksgiving, Dad not being there at Christmas, or us having to go up to the station to visit him. Ocala used to have, before cell phones, right? So this was before cell phones. They had two phones. They had a kitchen phone and a hall phone at headquarters. And I remember my mom used to tell us, like, before we would go to bed, all right, go call your dad on the kitchen phone or whatever. So we'd have to call him. Hey, all right, good night. How was, the typical dad thing, like, how was school? Good. And, usually kids are just like, yeah, it was normal, whatever. So, but we would do that, like, talk to him on the phone. And it was funny because, there's a lot of transition times now as a father. I reflect on that is, so mornings when you get up, like making your kids breakfast, that's kind of a cool thing before they go to school. I was able to do that this morning. And because Dad was working two jobs, like he would bring his lawn trailer to work with him, and he wouldn't, he would go straight from work to mow lawns. So there's just like a big gap between like a lot of those kind of normal times when you would see your dad and the times that we would, so it was cool being able to go to the station and stand on the trucks and doing stuff like that. But it was also, a lot of times where he wasn't there, not in a bad way, but just that, he was just, and I guess it was normal for us. So I never really thought like, man, I'm really missing Dad. It was just, he was at the firehouse, or he was going to the second job. And, so it was an interesting experience,
This is the conversation I think that's so important. I had several firefighter spouses on the show, probably a couple of years ago now, year and a half. And one of them was talking about one of their sons was all in on the fire service. As a little boy, he had all the trucks, he, had the costume, all the things. And then he was kind of mid-teens, and just in conversation, they've said, you still going to be a firefighter like your dad? And he goes, no. And they said it was kind of like very blunt about it. And they were all shocked. And they were like, why? He said, because Dad's never home. Not I'm worried about fires, not I don't want to see dead people, but Dad's never home.
Wow.
And there's a big difference between the job and 24 hours of giving yourself to your community and the way you are worked.
Yeah.
And this is why I think this is so important. There's even, when we reflect back to that era, the mandatory overtime, from what I understand from a lot of people, that really wasn't even a thing back then. And then you look at where we are now, and you can, mandatory or signed up for, because a lot of us jump on the grenade for other people so they don't get hit. But that's not the fire service. That's a change in working conditions that we can put back. But if mom or dad are going to be gone for 24 hours, we need to make sure that there's, as much time as we can have at home, and that when they work the next 24, unless it's some, God event where, yeah, of course it's an all hands thing, that you don't get a phone call at 7:00 in the morning saying you can't go home to your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that too. As a kid, I remember my mom saying, oh, Dad got overtime. And it was, it never was like a negative thing. They were always kind of excited. I mean, we were, firefighters back then, I'd have to ask them, but they were making less than $10,000 a year. It was crazy, not how much they were making. I mean, everything was cheaper back then, but I remember him getting overtime shift being like, all right, good, Dad got overtime, And back then, Ocala worked kind of a weird schedule. It was a 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, then 4 days off. So they called like a trick schedule. So literally. You could imagine how crazy that would be. So you work 24 hours, go mow grass for the most of the day. By the time he got home, we were probably close to being in bed already, and then he's cleaning up the equipment, going to sleep, getting back up and doing that. And he was on rescue, a lot of that time. So I could just imagine, and it wasn't any slower back then. And in fact, there was less rescue trucks, so they were running more calls on those rescue trucks. And Ocala was like BLS engines back then, or first responder engines, So that was their only EMS was a couple rescue trucks that they had. So thinking back, I mean, that he must have been getting smoked on some of those shifts. And if they were going to take time off, they had to take that whole trick off. Like have to take those 3 24-hour shifts off, and that's a lot of vacation time to use in one thing. So, or if you got overtime, it was now you're 3 days in a row there at the fire station. And so that was a big change when Ocala decided to do that. And it was funny because, they made that change because I think the union was pushing it, saying, hey, there's nobody wants to work for Ocala because they can't understand our schedule. So they said, we need to go to this new thing that's the 24/48. Right. And so they went to the 24/48, and then a couple of years later, they decided, we need to go to Kelly Days. And then the Kelly Day conversation started going. And of course, people were pushing back on that. So now, like, I have these conversations with, a lot of our guys now, and I said, listen, this isn't new. This is stuff that I've seen just because I've been around the fire department kind of growing up my whole life, that schedules change. And even before that, like with our mentorship program, we've got one guy who helps out there, Chief Remington, and his dad worked for the fire department. And that I'm talking about back in like the 40s, 50s. So you're expanding past or way back when they worked 24 on, 24 off, and there was only 2 shifts. You know what I'm saying? So although the schedule change right now feels like this thing that is like new and what's going to happen and all that stuff, this conversation has been happening over years and years and years in the fire service. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it more, but the more we get pushback on them, like, this is the same. This is just the evolution of it, guys. Like, this is what happens. We're going to go back to the 1 day on, 1 day off. No, like, this is the way we make this place better. And those guys before made it better for us. So we're working in a system where we actually can Kelly. So we've reduced our work hours, and now it's our time to make it better for the next group, I think, and that's always been my opinion on it. And I did a thing the other day where I was like seeing where I'm at in my career, and I'm 80% done. So I'm getting pretty close. And as these contracts start coming, when you're close to the end of your career, you want to bump up your pay a little bit more, because that means like your retirement's going to be a little bit higher. So usually what you get is you get some of the older guys talking and saying, hey, let's try to get us a contract this year where we get a big raise, because it's going to benefit them, right? They're not going to work in that schedule for the next 20 years. And that was the conversation I had with the new guys last night. I was like, listen, the best thing for you guys now is, while this momentum is going, while people are still talking about 24/72, while we're just fresh off of the governor coming to signing legislation at the Florida Firefighters conference, this is all momentum, that this is the time to get it done. Sometimes you got to see when that momentum's going and capitalize on it. And I think that's the environment we're in, and you were there, you spoke, and pretty much after your presentation, everybody was just like, yeah, I don't see what the negative part of it is, and then we go back and we have some meetings, and they're like, well, maybe we'll just do we'll start with a true Kelly day, and then we'll move from a true Kelly day. Maybe that'll move us into a 24/72, but I don't think that's the right move. I think the right move is, let's do the 24/72. Let's get the people that want to come on. I think departments are always worried about filling staffing voids. And when you say we're going to add a whole new shift, they start getting pretty nervous. But when you actually run the numbers and you look at how many people you're going to actually need to do the 24/72, when you go away from, because we're on the 6-week Kelly day, and our vacation time and our sick time, we don't need as much of that. So now you can fill a lot of those spots with people that would have been off on a Kelly day or something like that. So it just makes more sense,
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the evolution. And it's funny because when you're talking about your dad's old schedule, I did that in California, but it was 4 days.
Jeez.
So 24 on, 24 off, 4 times. And at the end of after the fourth 24, you got a 4-day, 1 tour, and then a 6-day the next. So still 56-hour work week. Yeah. So by the time you got to your fourth 24, you're already exhausted. But just like you said, if you got hit with overtime, that's a 72. 72 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off. And just to illustrate, when I joined Anaheim, I think first 6 months we were exempt, but after we hit the 6-month mark as probies, we now joined the overtime list. And it was one where you had to accrue enough hours where you were level with other people before they start getting hit again.
Right.
So the new guys got hit over and over and over and over again. My base, if I remember rightly, was 56, right around there. And I cleared 100,000 my first year. Jeez. That was from forced overtime. I might have signed up once in a blue moon, but so
basically doubling your salary in overtime.
So think about how many 72s that was. 96s sometimes.
Yeah.
So I've lived it. I've been in the meat grinder, you know what I mean? But just going back to what you said, I've said this a lot recently. We collectively are standing on the shoulders of giants. The reason why we have bunker gear and SCBAs and TICs and defibrillators and, ET tubes are because innovators from, mainly other professions, and then firefighters fought from in our profession, gave us these tools to really make a difference, saving lives.
Yeah.
What we have to do now, because I would argue you can't really engineer the Halligan any differently. Just stop doing that. Stop adding bits to it. It works. Move on. is the person, the human being. So whether it's the fitness conversation, the mental health conversations, and the schedule, the sleep, whether it's longevity, whether it's performance.
Yeah.
And so anyone who's digging their feet in, you're basically saying, I don't want to make the fire department any better. In fact, I really want to make it worse because the calls are getting more and more, recruitment's getting lower and lower. So we're basically killing our people.
Yeah.
And then just saying what you were with the Kelly Day. The Kelly Day can be a tool, and we've seen it with Plano, Texas have just gone to it, and they're using it as a stepping stone. So they have said, we are going in our contracts 24/72. They're going in 4 years. They're a big department. No Kelly Days. So year one, they're hiring enough people to fill the vacancies they have in the 3 shifts, and then enough people to cover a Kelly Day. So when you're off, you're actually off. Because what happens is if you just go to a Kelly, people will work their Kelly days because you created a vacancy and they're already short as it is. So all you've done is made more work for the BC staffing, and you've now paid a firefighter time and a half that they would have been earning straight time normally.
Right.
So the overtime that we're wasting just gets worse, not better.
Right.
But if you hire a class and say, all right, we are going to 24/72, and that's what brings the people in. You show them, like Gainesville did, that we care.
Right.
They will line up again. We have a fire academy, a firefighter baby making factory in our county, for Christ's sake.
I work there.
So, then there one. So it was a 6-week Kelly they covered, then a 3-week Kelly in year 2, then a 24/72 with debit days year 3, and then a full 24/72 year 4.
Okay,
so you can use them as a tool. But if you just say we're going to go to a Kelly, that's it, full stop. We're not actually saying we're going to a 24/72. You've just punched more holes in your schedule and cost your city or county even more money.
Yeah.
So I cringe every time someone says that. There's a lot of conversations locally about that.
Sure.
Because you're taking a step back. People say, where is the money? You're bleeding overtime. So you don't want to bleed more overtime. You want to take that money, put in a D shift, and that way now you're saving your city and county money, and that's also down the road your future pay raises too.
Yeah. And we were talking about this before you started recording, but the other problem with a Kelly Day is crew integrity. So we just had a Saturday Kelly, and my driver's a pretty senior driver. Both my drivers are pretty senior drivers, and they were both off. So now they floated in drivers, both of which weren't actual promoted drivers, right? So now they're new to the equipment, they're new to the apparatus, they're new to the zone, and I'm kind of playing catch up and working with them, making sure that they understand how to work the ladder, and just kind of getting some reps in for that. But it's just those Kelly days can create so much chaos for the department, where if it was just scheduled time off with the 24/72, all of us would have been off, and then there would have been another crew fill in that spot that are very familiar with the area that they work, so.
When I worked at Orange County, Station 70, this was before, I think they have like an actual official dive program now, but I was there before it was even initiated, and then during the on-ramp. So we got to, I think, like skin diver, surface diver, whatever they called it. And then I moved away from that department. But at that time, boat station. So I was a lifeguard, my engineer was a lifeguard. So that crew at that time, had we had an issue, I'd driven ski boats for years on summer camps in America. So together we were, and we trained all the time, but we were able to tow a boat to the lake, back it in, drive to the patient without killing them, get in, backboard, get them back out, do all the aquatic rescues that you'd have to do en route back to the shore, and then be able to, at the end of the day, put the boat back and take it back. We had anyone floating in, like you said, when there was a hole, and there wasn't even Kelly days at that point, but just to understand, we had people that couldn't even swim come to our station. At that point, you didn't need a certification.
Right.
So think about that. Your 15-year-old gets into a jet ski accident in the middle of the lake, and now you've got a crew possibly of 4 people that are fumble fucking trying to even get a boat down the ramp.
Yeah.
And then if they don't run your kid over, they're looking over going, well, how do we get them in? What do we do now? Trying to use tape on a wet backboard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that knowledge of that specificity of a station, and like you said, the first due knowledge, knowing is there a train line that goes right down the middle that this time there's going to be a freight train. I'm going to have to go all the way around over the bridge and back.
Yep.
Those are things that people have got to think about. And if you've got 4 intact shifts, like you said, the chances of that is greatly reduced to just, sick time and vacations.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just, and we have all of those kind of special hazards in our zone. And, even here where you live, this is covered by the city. So thank you, citizen. But there's unique hazards that Station 6 here has to deal with, and one of those is the interstate. That's a probably a lot of times we talk about that being one of the most dangerous things that we do is go on the interstate. I was involved in an incident one time where our battalion chief we were already on a vehicle accident, and a secondary vehicle accident happened where this guy come up over the bridge, lost control, and spun out and end up running into him backwards. And the group of us were just sitting there talking. And then as this is all happening, it felt like slow motion. And I told the chief, I was like, hold on. And basically this guy come in, boom, and the FHP was already on scene. So they were kind of set up like this, and the vehicle just slid right past him through the little gap and smashed right in back of our chief, and did pretty good damage to the vehicle. And, he was shooken up, and luckily he wasn't injured too bad, but that's one of probably 10 stories that I can tell you being on that interstate. And the people that are assigned to this zone know those hazards. But if you got somebody who floated in from the east side that's never run the interstate, they're out there and they think their little safety vest has got them protected. They're in for a rude awakening, right? Yeah, they're in for a rude awakening.
For the drunk person to aim at. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, even like all the distribution centers that are coming in, you get familiar with this stuff when you work in there, and it's kind of you understand it, but it's kind of a hard thing to explain to, I guess, stakeholders when you're talking about why something as simple as keeping crew integrity is so important. That makes a huge difference.
Well, this is the thing I've said many, many times, and again, talking back to this lawyer today, he's just got such a heart for helping people, which is why he fought this giant, this pharmaceutical company that literally had people like Rudy Giuliani in their pocket.
Jeez. And
he's still, he and his team brought that giant down. But, that's what I would think would be enough, is chiefs unions to be like, look, our people, you've lost numerous firefighters. Marion's lost numerous firefighters. Mm-hmm. You'd think that'd be enough. Like, coffins draped in flags would be it. I don't want to hear another fucking last call. Let's do something about it. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest, it's not, because there are many of those people that go home at 5 o'clock to their families, sleep in their own bed, and really clearly don't give a shit. Yeah. So the next part is, all right, well, let's look at the money then. Clearly the lives of your firefighters is not that important. So, and if you look at the millions and millions of dollars that are spent on overtime, filling these vacancies at the moment, the lack of recruitment, that you put these young firefighters through school and you equip them and you pay into the FRS, and then they go and leave 2-3 years later to somewhere else. The workman's comp claims, because people are, exhausted and getting hurt and getting diseases and mental health crises. And you've got the medical disabilities and God forbid, the line of duty death benefits. And then you've got, as you said, the lawsuits. Mm-hmm. When, let's say, reverse it, say that was a rescue that skid out of control and hit a civilian's car. There's a huge dollar amount to that.
Sure.
The Del Rey incident where they went onto the Sunrail. Mm-hmm. How many millions of dollars do you think that cost? So
plus the other thing is years of waiting to get that apparatus replaced. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've been following kind of the international, having conversations with these major apparatus manufacturers now, but they're basically created a monopoly, and like lead time on fire apparatus are insane right now. So now there's a community that doesn't have that truck for years because of that one mistake that was made, and that's significant. I think that's really significant,
Yeah,
when it comes to it. So,
and these are all affecting the citizens. This is taxpayers' money. And I've said, if you're going to have a diminished service, that's fine. Then send some refunds back through people's taxes. Hey, we're only 60%, proficient. So here's 33% of your taxes back.
Yeah, right.
No one is doing that.
Yeah, we've had openings for the last 24 months. So yeah,
exactly.
That's so funny.
So I think, whether you have the heart of actually taking care of your people, or you just want to look good on a budget sheet,
yeah,
it's the same conversation. You are bleeding money downstream, proactively invest in your people, create a department that wants people to test, and just ask anyone at the city of Gainesville how their recruitment is these days.
Oh yeah.
It's through the roof.
Yeah.
And I had one of my friends, I just checked in with him recently because I was told through Marion County that apparently it's not working in Gainesville and they want to go back to 24-48. And he laughed when I told him that.
It's funny how that narrative has been going around, and it's the same. So you've heard it. I heard it, work with some of these guys out of the fire college, and I asked them that, and they're like, no.
Exactly.
But it's the crate, like, I was like, so where the heck did this come from?
It comes from the people that don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah, I guess so.
See, we told you so. And what actually happened is, because Matt was telling me, he said they immediately, they went to it in September. By April, they were fully, for the first time, fully staffed, 4 shifts at the firefighter level.
Yeah.
He said it's a first for them. But, a teething problem of undoing something that's been a problem for 2-3 decades is it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
And the promotions, the officer positions are where it becomes more challenging because you've got to have enough time on experience to take these tests. But anyway, so he said that's what was happening, is that some of those levels, they still had some vacancies, so they were still paying overtime. But he said basically the end of this year, come January, they're fully staffed all ranks. But the city had gone just after a few months. Okay, we're not seeing the benefits financially yet. It's been a few months.
Yeah, relax.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like opening an elementary school and then saying, "Oh, we haven't seen college graduates yet." Well, you've got to give it time.
Yeah, this isn't working out. We're going to close the school.
Close it, bulldoze it.
What a great problem to have, though, right? That you now have officers that you need to develop, and you've got the opportunity to do that. Like, that is awesome. That's an awesome thing to be like, we've got to figure out this problem. But as administrators, you would think that would be like something that they just jump on it and would love to solve that problem. So I don't know. It's, they call it support staff for a reason. And I think a lot of times in the fire service, support staff forgets that's their role. I've had the experience of working in that role, and coming back to the line after working in the chief's office is definitely, it's created a really good perspective on, like what the roles are. Like, your job is to find people and hire them and get them prepared and all of that stuff. Our job is to run calls, provide service to the citizens, put fires out, bring people back to life when they're in cardiac arrest, things like that. And they hold us to a high standard. We've been working very hard on our out the door times, and we've crushed it. Like, our crew, not to boast or anything, but we just were the fastest on our shift. And one of the things we got was a gift card. So we got $50 for the rescue, $50 for the engine. And then our battalion chief, who didn't believe we could do it when we were was joking around a little bit, but he said, if you guys get that, I'll match it. So then we had $200, right? So what did we do with it? We ate good. We got some tomahawk steaks, and we ate like kings for that day. And it was amazing. And, it was a lot of that was all in good fun, but it was definitely something that, we made sure that we got the job done. And I think as administrators, they need to focus up, they need to, which my son says it all the time, you need to lock in, right? It's the new kids like, you need to lock in. Yeah. Listen, admin out there, you got to lock in, like, get the schedule right, get the people, keep them happy. That's your job. You got one job, and it's easy to be over there and be like, you feel overwhelmed because you're dealing with discipline issues or you're doing all that stuff, but that's the job you sign up for. And I think sometimes these folks get into these positions and they think that now they're going to basically be in charge of everything. And they don't understand that becomes more of a service position than anything, right? Now you're serving even more people, than you were than when you were just on the line. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And you talk about it, and I like how bluntly you can say it. And you've been free from a fire department for long enough to where you can call people cowards, and that's great. We need somebody out there that can be that voice, because I would probably get in trouble if I start saying that people are cowards, right? But you being free and being able to do that is definitely helping us, and people are hearing you, because I hear other people talk about you saying something about somebody else, and that's good. You need that voice, you need that other side of the story, and that's, I think, what platforms like yours are being able to do. I mean, and the thing is, as you know, I
like to think I'm a nice bloke, so I don't like even, having to be combative. But if the shoe fits, and this is the point, I'm never calling out someone by name either. Some people message me and the shoe fit their foot and they were all pissed off, but they weren't, then there we go. There's your sign. But the reality is, like I said, if lives, marriages, relationships with children are affected by your lack of leadership, that is a problem. You're out in the wilderness and you live in a cabin and you don't lead yourself well and you get out of shape and a bear eats you because you can't run away. Yeah. That's all on you. You do you. No one's criticizing that.
Right.
The moment your poor decisions, and in this case cowardice, affects other people, this is called a leadership position. And clearly you're not meant to be in that position. That's fine. Wherever, they say McDonald's is hiring, maybe that applies to you too. So, but the beautiful thing of this conversation is it's an opportunity to go, you know what? I don't think I have been doing things as well as I should have. I kind of have been, looking at my own life and I'm okay and not really fighting for my people. And if you have an aha moment and turn around, that's the best of the scenarios. But if you dig in and you still refuse, and I'm talking chief, union member, city or county council member, whoever it is, and you're still like, I'm not going to do anything for them, I'm okay, then we have an issue. So
yeah, I think it hits hard when you talk about the same people that are making these decisions are working a 40-hour week and they're going home and they're sleeping in their bed every night. And there ain't a lot of times when those guys got to show up to a fire. We're not calling our chief and having him come out at 3:00 in the morning, and that's statewide, to come hang out on a fire with us. Right. So, they are making these decisions and then sleeping very well at night. So,
yeah. And as I've also underlined, I was a union dues paying member my whole career. Our leadership on that side work in a city that works 24/72. And the actual leaders, I don't think, are on a shift, if I'm not mistaken. They're full-time union people, so they're on a 40-hour work week. Where is the conversation for advocating for the rest of the country?
Yeah.
You and your people, you came up through this system where that was your work week, and you're not saying, hey, we need to change this for everyone else because what we've got is working. I just had one of the chiefs from DC who was 24/72, and they don't have a recruitment problem. Surprise, surprise. You know what I mean? So this is an important conversation. So
yeah.
So let's get to your journey into the fire service then. When you were at high school, knowing, having experienced a father in that profession, were you already thinking of the fire service, or was there something else?
I try to think back and remember exactly when that moment was, or if I was where I was at with that. And I remember trying to think about maybe being a archaeologist, because I watched Indiana Jones and I thought maybe that's what being an archaeologist was. I learned that was not what they did. That was kind of a movie guy.
It's like watching CSI and going, I want to skin dive and jump out of helicopters.
Yeah, exactly. But what did happen, and what I do remember pretty well, is that Marion County was growing at the time. And one of the strategies to recruit more people was they went into the high schools. And there was a couple Marion County guys, and they were at my high school, Bellevue High School. And they were just basically walking the halls and just trying to figure out who wanted to be a firefighter. So they just engaged in conversation. We're like, hey, do you ever think about being a firefighter? I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of dad's job, but I don't know if that's for me. And they're like, well, here's what we're doing. We're doing a mini-mester. And this was where they took like one semester of credit and then just kind of condensed it all into a very short amount of time. And I don't remember exactly how the mini-mesters work, but basically for 3 weeks or something like that, that was all you did, was focus on this small class. And that class that I took was a Firefighter 1 class. We did all of the book work and all of that stuff kind of during school hours. And then on the weekends, we would go to the fire college and do Firefighter 1 skills. So working with hoses, ladders, and stuff like that. And from that program, I was hooked. I was like, this is for me. So after the program, I got done with the training. So I was a Firefighter 1, and that made me qualified to be a volunteer. So I started volunteering at Station 17 in the Shores, and got on their roster, volunteered a couple times. And then before you know it, I was going to EMT school. I got that done, and then went to fire college, finished up, and started working for Marion County. So my first job was with Marion County, and I worked there for about a year. At the time, Marion County was a much, much smaller department. So this is 1999. And there was about 150 people I think worked for Marion County at that time. Fast forward to now, I think they're at like 600, 700, something like that. So it grew quite a bit since then. But at the time, I was working out in the forest. My first assignment was out Station 4 on 40. And man, it opened up my eyes. Like, they had some crazy wrecks out there, crazy structure fires. Even to this day, that you know how like people ask you that question, what's the worst thing you ever seen? It goes back to that. And I think it's not the worst thing I ever seen, but it was the most dramatic to me because I was 18 years old, 19 years old. And it was my first fire fatality, and it was a mom and a daughter still in their room, that succumbed to smoke inhalation. And we went in there, did the search, found them, and, they seemed like mannequins at the time, so it was just, but that one really stuck with me. A couple wrecks out there in the county stuck with me. But yeah, so this whole beginning of my career is out here in this crazy, like almost Wild West. And like I said, I grew up in Bellevue. So Bellevue wasn't like super city, we were still a little country out there, but in the forest, it was completely different. I'm going into these houses and people had like dirt floors with like rugs over them. And just like, I saw a whole new side of the community that was just blew my mind, and again, we were so short staffed at the time that there were times where I'd be at the station by myself and have to pull a tanker truck, and go to a fire that was out in Salt Springs. And I had no idea where I was going. There was no computers in the trucks or GPS on our phones because we didn't have that stuff. So you had a map book and a 19-year-old kid driving down Highway 40 in a tanker that weighed thousands and thousands of pounds. And here I am coming to try to find the fire, but it was amazing, and I enjoyed every minute of it when I was out there, and I loved working for Marion County. But the city of Ocala called me like a year later. There was an opening, and they were paying a little bit more. And telling my dad some of these stories that was going on out there, he was like, maybe that's not the safest place to work, So I left Marion County, went to Ocala, started as a firefighter there, and Ocala has been around since 1885, so it's a pretty established historic city fire department. Your roles are very, much specific to what you're doing. So you're not a 19-year-old kid making decisions. You're being led by a seasoned captain. And so now the experience is completely different. The cool thing, though, was that when I started working for Ocala, my dad was still working on the line. And so you can imagine every now and then we would work together. And I don't know if he was on a swap or if he was on overtime or what, but we had to shift where we were both working at Station 1 downtown. And I was like, yeah, we were talking about it, and we're like, man, the city's much different, and you seem like you're right on top of calls. And I remember us having this conversation. He's like, yeah, you got to get your gear on quick because, in Marion County, we had a good response time. So I had some time to get ready, And so all right, we have this conversation, and that night we get a structure fire, and the where the fire was versus where the station is. So Tuscaloosa Park, where Tuscaloosa Park is, where the water tower is.
Yes.
So Station 1 was right there in the park, and we were going to a fire that was right there at the water tower. So maybe 4 blocks, right? Well, I screwed this whole thing up from the very beginning. I slept through the call. So he had to come in, wake me up, like, get up, we got a structure fire. And, when you get waken up like that, you're out of it already. So I'm like, okay. So I run to the truck, I'm trying to get all my stuff on, and we finally get there, and I'm half dressed. We're already there. Fire's pouring out of this house. I mean, it was already, well involved, and we're getting ready to go interior. And I get out, get to the door, help pull the line, and Dad looks at me and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, go get your helmet. So I had to run back to the truck, get my helmet. We're in there and we're doing it, man. There's fire everywhere. We're putting this fire out, and rescue guys are going in there and they're doing the search. And I remember, it was just one of those ones that you always remember, right? Let the electrical's popping off. So there's electrical popping off in the ceiling. So it was just, this is awesome. Well, the whole time I'm in there, I felt my gear felt weird, right? So we get out, and our driver, who is much taller than I am, and he's actually a battalion chief now, he's getting ready to retire, Chief McGee, and he was like, you got on my pants and my boots. So he's sitting there with his flip-flops because he definitely ain't getting into my gear. So I was in his gear going through this fire. So God, I messed everything up, but you know what? it made for a pretty memorable kind of first fire at the department. And that was a good memory. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I think it was my first fire in Hialeah. Bunkered up okay. I've done it many times where I've still got the headset on and got out and got my head snapped back or still buckled into the seatbelt without realizing it.
Suck.
But no, there was a house fire and there was a car behind a wooden fence that was on fire as well. So they were trying to get the gate open and we were pulling the gate and basically the whole fence collapsed and I was underneath it. Not like in a dangerous way, just in an embarrassing way. It was light, but I was like, oh, Mayday! That's when I kind of realized that fires really are just organized chaos.
Exactly.
There's not orchestrated like the fire academy where this guy comes here and this girl does this. No, it's just like try not to look like an idiot if you can help it while you're using your fundamentals to put the fire out.
Yep. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen on fires and pop up as fast as I can. Oh, nobody saw that, or getting stuck on a fence. Like try getting over a fence with bunker gear. You will look crazy.
Yes.
There's no easy way to do it. So, I've definitely felt really embarrassed on a lot of things.
We had a fire in, I think it was the city of Orange when I was in California, and it was a tweaker's house.
Yeah.
And this gentleman had not only tiled the firewalls within his own home, but as was extremely apparent to us when we started flowing water, he'd also tiled his driveway with like that bathroom tile.
Oh my god!
So now with the water, it becomes like an ice rink, and people that I didn't fall, thank God, but people were just dropping captains and all this stuff.
Oh yeah!
It was like firefighters on ice. It was hilarious. But this guy had just.
Out there, like we were talking about in the forest, you go down 40, you can go, 25 miles and never run into traffic, where here you run into traffic the moment you start responding. Mm-hmm. So what that equals for us is creating more stations in more places, because now just getting a mile takes a lot longer. So that road project has basically created an island out here for Station 6. So, we're only good as our full complement. And, NFPA looks at that. But, when you get an alarm, your first truck's going to get there. And we always talk about that. You hear that a lot. Oh, our first truck got there in 4 minutes. Well, that's great, but that's 2 people doing work. And in a structure fire, you need way more than that. And that's where backup comes in. Now, when you create roads that, bottleneck us, their backup is trying to come from MLK, and they have to travel down Highway 200 and be stuck in traffic that whole time. That's a problem, and that's a problem that we identified in our meeting with the chief and the city manager, and we were asking for more people at the stations. So now instead of just having the minimum that they have to have on a truck, which is 3, what about 4? Or adding another apparatus and another station and stuff like that. So as our city continues to grow, and this isn't just an Ocala issue, this is a statewide issue, but as these cities start to grow, it almost seems like on the backside of that, they think, oh, okay, now we have to grow the fire department, instead of kind of being proactive in it and saying, okay, as this part develops, so does we have to have space for our places for fire stations, increasing our manning, increasing staffing for the day and stuff like that. So they don't seem synced right now. And I've heard of areas that are doing a little bit better, but a lot of them are just trying to play catch up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just from a driver, and obviously having driven for 14 years in all kinds of vehicles, from tiller trucks to rescues, I can see exactly what you're talking about. Like Orange County, when I worked there, right at the southernmost tip of Orlando, Orange Avenue was a nightmare. And sometimes it was one way each way. and you'd have to oppose traffic a lot.
Yep.
But if you've got giant medians, obviously that makes it much, much harder. At least there, we could just cross over the yellow. But, the people not being able to turn into the plazas, now you've got those UEs that are probably creating more problems, that people getting hit. So it's that proactive side. And again, if you're asking for more firefighters, then we're back to the 24/72 conversation of, this is what I tell people. If you want 4 on a truck and you can't even hire now, what makes you think you're going to be able to get enough for 4 on a truck? You've got to change the way that you do things to attract people to come in. But yeah, the proactive side, like, let's get drivers to be better from the get-go. Yeah. Like, I watched Ty's, the driving test 2.5 years ago, and I was like, oh my God. He drove around a parking lot. Like, here you go. Right, enjoy the turnpike. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we wonder why we have so many wrecks. It's insane. Yeah. So yeah, another big part of the conversation. Well, let's walk through. So you transitioned into Ocala. You talked about some of the fires with your dad. Let's talk about the medic school first, because that's obviously where you and I met. So you enter as an EMT. Kind of what was your road into leveling up on the EMS side? Yeah.
So started as a firefighter EMT, started thinking about what, my career would be. Like, we, at the time, as crazy as it sounds, Ocala was still kind of playing catch up with EMS, right? So we still had drivers that were first responders, weren't even EMTs. So they had to go to EMT school. So at the time I was thinking, all right, am I going to be an EMT for life, or am I going to decide to promote? And so I took my first promotional test, became a driver, and then said, you know what, I need to go to paramedic school. So I was already promoted as a driver, and so it was kind of a little bit later in my career of going to paramedic school, but I decided that I wanted to do that. I had always wanted to do it, and it was just never a good time. You know how that goes. But looking back, I think I was so much more mature and prepared for the challenge of paramedic school. Even though at the time I had 2 young kids, it still was a much better time for me to do it than if I would have went a couple years before that, because I had just taken that time and really worked on being, creating study skills and habits that helped me to succeed in the program. Because you got to take it serious, and I think adult learners, half of the challenge is learning how to learn, right? So figuring out what worked for you. I know for me, it was a ton of flashcards and, going over it and over and over it. Now Quizlets is amazing, but we didn't have that back then, right? So we had to, make regular flashcards, and that definitely helped a lot. And, the doing well in the promotional test, I think helped my, feeling that I could do this, cause I was looking at it thinking, this is going to be really hard, and I don't know if I want to commit the time to do this. And, after I did pretty good on those tests, I was like, I can do this, I got this. So that was kind of, and we had a great instructor. I mean, one of the greatest, rest in peace, right? He just recently passed away, but Wayne was an awesome instructor. And I think he definitely helped us to get through it. Yeah.
I remember when we first, joined the program and all met each other, and people were talking about, there were other instructors, and we got Wayne, and oh my God, he's the hardest. But I just remember thinking, well, good though, but we're learning to help people not die. Right. I want to have the hardest person, not just if they're just a dick, but, to expect a lot from us. And they did. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, when the first class, Wayne said, you'll be able to do this. He said, but think of it like a freight train. You're walking in front of a freight train that's moving slowly. If you keep walking, you'll be fine. But if you stop and tie your shoelace, you're done. Yeah. I was a single dad working in Orange County at the time, getting murdered for 24 hours and driving straight to class. And then the next day was the 12-hour clinicals. It was brutal. So he was absolutely right. Like that year, there was no shoelace tying. It was just, bite down on your mouth guard and
I remember one of like our first pharmacology tests. I remember like taking that and it being super hard. And I'm like, there's no way this is a real test. Like, he's going to give us the answers at the end. And he's like, all right, pencils down. Everybody done? Go outside. I was like, damn, this was a real I got to lock in. Exactly. That was that time. I was like, okay, now we got to study. This is because, historically fire service classes have kind of been show up and, put your time in and you'll get your certificate. Where this was one, I take paramedic school serious,
Yeah. I've always said that I've done some of the, classroom based ones in the fire school. I did, I think, Fire Instructor and some of those ones. And I was just like, dude, why are we taking a week to do this?
Yeah.
Because, you want everyone's bored. We're moving slowly.
Right.
You tell us that we're supposed to be here till 5, but every day we go home at 3.
Right.
So then why don't we just make this a 2 or 3 day test and stop wasting everyone's time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that whole landscape has changed so much now. Now people are getting these classes online. So they're doing it while they're on shift still, knocking out all of their classes. And the online learning is I think, changing the environment completely. And I imagine at some point paramedic school is going to have to catch up with that as well. So there's still kind of, the format is very similar to when we went, but at some point that's going to have to change. I think it's just a matter of time, and technology is probably a driver that's going to change a lot of that too. I was listening to a recent podcast, and they were talking about this billionaire who started this new school, and it was basically 2 hours a day is all the kids spend doing focused AI learning. And then he has such good success with it, and it just kind of explains some of the concepts around it, and it all made sense. How much time did the kids, and I'm sure you talked to your son about it, but how much time do they spend just kind of moving around from one classroom to another classroom, and then this and this and all this work that they're doing in there, and it's still like, just old system, like they're just learning in just the antiquated way. And one of my wife's friends is a teacher, and she teaches 4th grade. And we were in the back the other day, back room, just kind of hanging out, eating and talking about stuff. And, that was one of the things that came up is they were talking about math. Like, this is how we teach math. And I'm like, well, why does anybody need that anymore? We all have phones that can do all of that math for us already, or calculators, or, you know what I mean? Like, at what point do we say, all right, yeah, it would be awesome if everybody could just do this type of stuff and learn it, but we don't have to. Technology's made it to where we don't have to do this. So let's free it up, right? Who was the one who said that I might not know the answer, but I always know where to find it? Like, that's now. That's the world we're living in. And in EMS, we're seeing that all these new monitors, they have like, they'll tell you what they think's going on with the patient. You put them on a monitor and it'll say, here's what we think, so it's kind of giving you a backup. And in 10 years, what is that going to look like? In 20 years, what is that going to look like? So, I think education has got to catch up with technology, and I don't think it's there. It doesn't seem like, or maybe it is, and I just don't know because I'm not involved in that world, but it's getting there. We're really starting to see it help. Even my reports are getting so much better now because of all these report writing programs have AI assist on them. Like, yeah, I think that is a better way to say that than the way I just said it. You know what I mean? So,
you said this is bullshit.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah. So it is. I mean, I guess I see it creeping in, but it's exciting to see, kind of what that's going to look like in the future. And I think it's going to provide better care, because it'd almost be like having a smart friend next to you all the time going, well, it could also be this, right? Their blood pressure's up, they're having a headache, this could be this, and that can help the paramedic kind of make their decision. I don't think it should be the end all, but learning how to work with that technology, I think, is definitely going to make us better.
No, I agree. I mean, even like the radiology, there's a lot of AI that will read, I think, X-rays and MRIs and things, from what I understand, and say, it looks like this.
Yeah.
And they're not taking that as gospel, but then the radiologist is almost like second opinioning it. It's like, okay, yes, this is it, or no, actually, I don't think it is, but I'm glad that you said that, because now I can rule that out, and I think it is the other thing.
Right.
So, but I think it's efficiency of learning too. The reps that we need the reps. So the being in a lab, doing those skills under pressure, being looked at by your friends when you make mistakes and you push the wrong drug, and give rectal instead of oral, or whatever you did by mistake.
Normal.
Those are good things to do in real life. I don't think AI can replace that. The technology, the mannequins and all that stuff, absolutely. But the book learning, especially if you get away from job specific and you look at education, have you ever used anything more than high school level math in life ever?
I can't think of. I mean, the most math challenged I've ever been is doing dosage.
Yeah, or
right?
pumping an engine.
Yeah, pumping an engine. But even then, once you're out of hydraulics, it's just kind of like, or bump it up or bump it down kind of deal.
Pump at 150, break at 350.
Until somebody looks at you crazy. You're like, too much? No?
They start kind of spinning around on the hose line.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, like Becky, she just went through med school, and then thousands of dollars she had to spend on high-level math classes. Yeah. She's an optometrist. She uses machines. She doesn't need to calculate the refraction of the light in the pupil. She just looks through these machines and, through her high school level math is able to understand, how to assess these patients and disease processes and all that. So if we could strip away all the unneeded stuff, and like you said, but if you're going to be an architect or, an engineer or whatever, then you clearly need the math route. That's exactly what was built for you.
Right.
But doctor, nurse, firefighter, cop, do we need to have them, or even doctors, do we need this high level math? No, you don't,
Right.
And we don't need to be down to the molecular level either.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a patient, you're seeing how they are presenting. You're not thinking about their mitochondria at that point.
Oh yeah.
And whether ATP is effective or not. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is an interesting conversation. I think you're absolutely right. Leaning into technology, but still having that education, because God forbid the whole network goes down and we're back to bows and arrows again. Then it would be good to at least someone remembers how to do the 10 times table.
we rely on technology so much now. It's not even funny. I mean, and like our department, we have radios and computers and in motion boxes and all of this stuff that now is every shift there's something. And our batteries are being wore out because the trucks are now basically, we got pull back in the station and got to put them in life support, right? Mm-hmm. Plug them in, because otherwise it's going to drain the batteries on them, because they're just so full of technology. And when it goes down, it's dramatic. I mean, there was a 911 went down not too long ago. I don't know if you remember hearing about that.
I do. Yeah. I got the text.
Yeah. And it was, somebody cut the wrong cord, and it was like the perfect storm, because then somebody cut the other wrong cord. It was just like, it was bad. And I was working that day, and they go, "Hey, 911 is down." Okay, what does that mean? If you call 911, it goes to nothing.
Are we talking Bruce Willis down?
down. And we were like, "Oh, well, then we won't get any calls." And somehow we still were getting calls. So the text worked still. It was crazy. It was like that people were texting in to get 911. And I think that is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. There was a second way to get in touch with us. But yeah, it was bad. Our infrastructure is a little more fragile than I think we think sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and again, back to our earlier discussion, the more threadbare our department, the easier it is to tear.
Yeah.
All it takes is one little, incident.
Yeah.
Look at the Uvalde Police Department, for example.
Yeah.
One incident. I mean, a horrendous incident, but one that another department, a well-trained, well-staffed, well-led department, would have mitigated completely differently. So how many millions does that cost them? You know what I mean? From cutting corners.
Yeah.
Lowering hiring standards.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, speaking of that, bringing solutions to problems, I talk about all the time your mentorship program. I talk about Chris and the creation and all that stuff, because I think it's literally the solution to what we're talking about. You get the funding, you get the support from the city, and you're like, okay, well, how are we going to get more people? Going into a high school and begging children to work for you. Well, bringing solutions to problems. One of the programs that I talk about all the time is your guys' mentorship program. And with Chris and the inception and all those things. And Chris was on here, I think probably about 3 years ago now, talking about it. But when you're looking at, well, how do we solve this recruitment crisis? Well, you don't just invite a bunch of 18-year-olds with a heartbeat to come be firefighters. You got to find the right kind of person. If you're talking about diversity, whether it's a gender or an underserved population, once again, you put a mentorship program and you challenge people from whatever background to rise to the bar, and you give them, the resources. So when did that kind of come across your radar? And then talk to me about, the metamorphosis of that program here.
Yeah. So from the beginning, I was kind of involved in it. I remember the first couple mentorship days that we had, it was just a few people. And it was just an idea like, hey, let's start bringing people in and we'll work with them. To fast forward now where we have over 50 people pretty regularly showing up on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And, I think initially, and with most mentorship programs or firefighter recruit programs or something like that, they focus on one thing specifically is recruitment. Like we need to recruit more people. That's why we're starting a mentorship program. And I think one of the things that makes our program a little different and where we've really seen success with it is we've understood that it helps with recruitment, but what it really is we're working with people, right? So we're shaping these young folks' life. And I say young folks, but they're, we have all ages. We have people that, come out of the military and they start with the program. So our program is pretty much all ages. It starts about 13. I think some of our youngest ones have been about 13, and they come out and their involvement's a little different. But what we've done is we've really created an environment where you're going to go out there, you're going to work on skills. And of course, since it's the fire department, a lot of the skills that we work on are fire ground skills, but the lessons they learn from the program are much deeper than that, right? So it's teamwork, it's community focused. A lot of them spend time going on the weekends and volunteering for different things. When it's storm season, they're out there filling sandbags. And what we try to instill in them is that if you have people that are going to be investing in you, you also have to invest back into the community. So that's been a really big part of the program now is, spending time with them, talking about, what it means to be part of the community. And they learn those lessons every time they're out. We try to create experiences where they hear from, most recently, we did a day where they went to the fire museum at our downtown station. So we spent some time at the fire museum, talked about all of the, where it began, like where the fire department began in the city. And, that same day, a retired New York City lieutenant showed up and got to address the group, and they got to hear stories from the war years, and, the kids were awesome. They were listening, but the instructors and all of us were really into that. Like when he started talking about like taking breaths out of your bunker coat and all that like stuff, we were like, this guy is the best, and he worked at a really busy station and stuff like that. But, they met him. We've had, the E1 founder came out and spent some time with him and talked about kind of how he developed the E1 company and what it was like back then. And, it was a bunch different time. Stories of him going out to Boston and trying to land a deal with the Boston Fire Department so they'd buy E1 trucks, and his experiences interacting with different fire departments, and all the way down to like we've had the bankers come out, so people from Main Street Bank have come out and talked to them about like, so you're going to need a bank account at some point, and you're going to need to learn how to save money. So financial literacy, we make sure we add parts of that. So as much as it's a recruitment tool, it really is a mentorship program. And I think the longer we do it, the more we understand how important the term mentorship is, because we've had folks that have gone on to become firefighters. And that's the coolest thing in the world. When you're out there on a call and somebody shows up and it's a person that you worked with from day one of them deciding that they wanted to be a firefighter, that's a really cool feeling. Like, I love that. But we've also had a lot of people that have decided not to become firefighters, and they've pursued other, careers. That we've got one right now that works for the police department. So we see him all the time.
I'm sorry. It's one failure.
And listen, no, we love it. Anytime somebody tells us that they are interested in the police department, we do everything we can to take down barriers and get them, because we need as many good cops 100%. As we can. We work with them every day. And as much as we love to give them a hard time, like those guys are doing a really, really tough job. And, so hats off to them when they decide that that's the path they want to go down.
And it's a different kind of person too. And I mean that, compassionately. Police and fire are two very different jobs. So if that resonates with you, then you absolutely need to go for it, because, we are brothers and sisters in uniform. There's no question. And we would give each other shit, but that's definitely coming from a good place. But I mean, if Yeah, I mean, just no other way to phrase it. Like, going hands-on with people and going towards gunfire is very different than all the stuff that we do. And you'll hear from the humble cops and the humble firefighters, well, I could never do what you do. And I agree. And I'm one of the people saying that. So I got all the respect for them, you know, but we do have to make fun of each other too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. OPD's got a program that they've kind of worked with us on for their own little like mentorship part of it. And I got to go out one day. I taught Stop the Bleed and a couple other things to their guys. And then they were doing the VR like interactions, right? So they put me in the machine, put the goggles on, and they would run these scenarios where somebody would come up and they start yelling and this like that. And I am the worst cop. I would be the worst cop in the world because I end up shooting everybody. It was crazy. Like it escalated quick, and I was quick to pull my firearm and shoot. So it is like, yeah, they have a very challenging job. So yeah, we definitely, you know, encourage those, you know, people that are looking at that, but we have had a lot of success with it. It's funny because there's a core group of us that are involved in the program, and, you know, we spend every Monday out there, like holidays, bad weather, rain, cold, whatever. We're going out there and we're keeping it consistent. And it's important for it to be consistent. And a lot of times they're like, oh, it's Veterans Day. Are we going to still do that? Yep. It's still happening. Like, some of us are going to show up. If you guys show up, we're going to show up, because that consistency matters, you know? And, so doing that, you know, you really start to see these people develop, and you know, there's been quite a few of them where they show up the first day. You'll have this, you know, kind of young, scrawny person show up, and they don't look like much of what you would expect somebody who's ready to go, you know, balls to the wall into a structure fire, put a fire out, something like that. And to see them make that change is amazing. And I think, you know, Hickman's always had a great vision for that. And he's been very patient with it, and he's taught me that, you know, so because there have been times where we're working on ladders and I'm like, this kid's crying because the ladder's too heavy. And they're like, is this supposed to be this heavy? It hurts my shoulder. And I'm like, yeah, it is, you know, and kind of just being a little rough with them. And then fast forward, you know, that now we've got kids that are going to paramedic school. We had our first officer, so a person from the mentorship program who's gone and spent a bunch of time with us is now already an officer in Marion County, and that was pretty cool to see it, you know, all come out. And I got a guy that works with me at the station who came out and we did your class, and he's awesome, and he went through the mentorship program. So and he's given back. So to not only have a lot of them got, you know, they've gotten jobs and they work right now for the system, for the Marion County or Ocala, but they show back up and they give back to the kids, and that's been just amazing to kind of see it all come together like that. And, you know, I'm 25 years into the fire service right now, and of all the things that I've done, I think that has probably been the most impactful, you know, is getting involved with this program. I've seen the results of it. You know, they hit different. You know, when you prepare the next generation, I think it just hits different. And that's, I think, you know, what we should be doing once we get to this point in our careers anyway, right? It's just preparing that next group of people that are going to be wearing the badge when we're at the nursing homes and we fall and they need to come pick us up, right? I remember you. Weren't you in the mentorship program? But yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, it really has been, it's been an amazing journey. And I have been blessed enough to be, to work in most of the departments or most of the divisions in our department. So I've been, you know, like we've talked about before, worked my ranks through as a driver and an officer. And then I went into fire prevention, and I've been in fire training, and I've been an assistant chief. And through all of that time, I've got to see most of the different parts of it. Even worked as a community paramedic for a little while. We were doing a core truck, and I got to do that. So I got to see that side of it and kind of what Hickman does on a day-to-day. And that was amazing to see how we were helping the community in that way. And public education, which has always been a thing that I've been passionate about. I've been able to go out and teach CPR to, you know, hundreds of people, fire prevention to, you know, large groups, and that's really rewarding. but through all of that, the one thing that I can say that, has definitely affected me the most is seeing these young folks show up that, not really sure what they wanted to do in life and get put on a path where, now it not only changed their life, it changed their whole family, so it's huge.
I think, we talked about this before, but this is something I underline when I talk about your program specifically is Ethan, my stepson, my bonus boy, went for a little bit.
Sure.
And he came out going, I don't think I want to be a firefighter. And I was like, well, that's awesome. And he became a mechanic in the end. So, he I think I would definitely credit that as one of the things that made him realize that he did kind of, enjoy the hands-on aspect of work, because up to that he was, an academic high school kid like they all are, with very little experience to any of the trades or anything like that. But yeah, so there's so much value in someone, like you said, taking away some of the life lessons like teamwork and, shared suffering and all these other things, but then going, okay, I'm going to check that off my list, rather than spending thousands of dollars going through an EMT fire program and getting into the station and going, I don't really like this very much.
Yeah.
Now you're, so much money behind and several years behind.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely an easier way to find out if this is for you or not, like today I was there's somebody who one of our captains recommended contact me to get part of the program. So it's on a daily basis. I'm texting back and forth with some of these people and kind of, getting them kind of put on a path of how to get into the program and go from there. And one of the other things is that, I work at the fire college, so I work with minimum standards and I know exactly kind of what the expectations are going to be. So we've been able to kind of gear our program to where when you're first being introduced to it, the skill level is a little bit less, right? We introduce you to knots, we introduce you to ladders and stuff like that, where the ones that we're preparing that are going to go in January, like we got a group of them that are going to be going in January to the fire college, we're giving them like focused attention skills that they're going, when they show up on day one, they're already going to be way, way ahead of the game. They've already worked through donning and doffing, that first day when these folks show up, it's chaos, right? They're trying to get their gear on. They're freaking out. Now they got to go do bear crawls because nobody got it on in time. These guys have already been experienced with that. And then also tying off tools and hoisting and all of that stuff. And then they can all put ladders up and they know what to expect with the big two and what the state's going to look for when they need to get certified at the state level. So it really has become something that if you do this program and you commit to it, when you go to the fire college, it's definitely going to make your experience a lot easier, and that's good because we need them to pass and we need firefighters because we need to fill the ranks so we can go and get that D shift up.
How many pike poles have you hoisted in your career?
Man, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you asked that because I have done zero.
Me too. Strange.
But yeah, I know. And we talk about that all the time. We're like, why do we focus so much time on tying tools for hoisting? And we barely ever do it. But it's a good way to kind of stay focused on a task and then go from there. I think.
I remember when I worked for Hialeah, they, again, talking about, cities and corruption and all that stuff. They had an ordinance, I think it's probably a national one, where if it's 5 stories, you had to be sprinklered. So all the builders in Hialeah would build the buildings 49.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
And so no sprinklers, no standpipes, nothing. And so, and then the freaking railings on the balconies were, rusted through. So you couldn't lean on anything in Hialeah or you'd end up on the floor. But one of the really cool techniques that they showed us was you take the bundle up to the fire floor, you lower down the female, they connect the Y and then you pull it up.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, well, why the fuck are we doing this whole rope thing for so long when this is so much easier?
Yeah.
And then we did it in, where was I? Orange County, I think. And one of the guys lost their mind. Like, what if it uncouples? I'm like, oh my fucking God. Is this person who's in charge of this fire scene right now that is suddenly going to unscrew?
What if aliens show up and shoot our hoses? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as you know, when you go through it, and I mean, another perfect example, we always taught to fight a car fire like a Class A fire.
Yeah.
That's a big Class B dumpster is what it is.
Yeah.
You've got plastics, you've got gas, you've got oil, you've got rubber tires.
Yeah.
So flow foam, don't get anywhere near it. unless of course there's a rescue issue, and just stand back and cover it in foam and it will go out.
Oh,
but
yeah.
instead you're chasing, fuel piles around the freeway. Now you're out of water. So some of the stuff that we were taught, the way we throw ladders, oh my God, I went to California and I'm in the academy there after fighting for one of the positions and watching these people shoulder and, do all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so screwed. I got to learn this fast. But yeah, they don't flip the ladder. They shoulder it, they put it up. The way they foot it, they wrap their foot and their knee. So you're looking at the ladder, you hoist it, and then you just put it in the window.
Right.
I was like, well, we're not supposed to turn around. No. It's rated to be fine either way. Why didn't they tell us that in the academy? That's the way that we were taught in the academy. The only way it's going to work is in a fire academy.
Right.
Because there's no fences, no parked cars, no alleyways.
Yeah.
But you can't throw a ladder the way we teach it here.
Oh, man.
So
Yeah.
when I came back from California, it really opened my eyes. And then people over here were telling me, oh, we don't get on roofs because it's, we have lightweight construction. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dude, the whole fucking building in California is lightweight construction. What are you
Right.
talking about?
Yeah.
You'll put people under a roof, but you won't put someone in there to make a chimney and get off quickly. So this is where I really started looking at some of the stuff we were taught and like, it's just plain wrong.
Yeah.
But just like backboarding, no one has just had the guts to say, we just need to stop. There's no studies that even show backboarding worked ever.
Yeah.
Why are we taping someone to a big plank of wood that they slide all over the rescue when we're transporting?
Fromfelter has pushed us away from backboarding.
Oh,
finally.
Good.
Yeah. He's been really harping on that. And so, we're starting to see
it needs to.
It go
there's
away.
no science behind it. Why the hell are we doing it?
Yep.
And the same with the shoulder. You should be able to high shoulder a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
That's not being prejudiced. It's just the expectations. If you're running short, one person high shoulder throw, spiking the ladder is not some elaborate insta-famous thing. It's a working technique for, a fire department. So the way we teach it is doing a disservice to a good firefighter.
Yeah. We do ladders on Fridays, and we just had a day where us and a couple other units met downtown, and we met in an alleyway, and none of that stuff.
Picture.
Yeah, none of that stuff works in that you learned at the fire college, and it's so I guess it's in the defense of the training center. It's minimum standards, and you get introduced to it. But when you come to a department, it's their responsibility to get you up to speed on what you're actually going to do. And that was what we were doing that day. Like, hey, you can't lay the ladder down. Now you got to beam it and put it up sideways. And, how far is this ladder going to reach? Which is another thing, is being able to judge how far your ladders can reach. And that only comes with, experience of raising the ladder and trying to get to a window, or, what it looks like when you get to a window. I seen a video the other day of a guy on a ladder, like doing exactly what they teach him, like fighting fire from a ladder, and he opens the nozzle and throws them all the way off the dang ladder. So those are things that we talk about and work through once you are working at the department. And, it's kind of our responsibility, I think, at that point as officers to say, hey, we got to be ready for whatever our zone throws at us. It's not always going to be a nice little dirt spot where we can get the ladder to stick real good and go up. They could be trying to do this on some concrete and it be floating all around. So, so I've seen it on both sides, teaching it to our new probationary guys, but then also teaching it at the college, is much different. And I think a lot of times most instructors will tell the recruits that, like, we're going to teach you how to do this a certain way because this is the fire college and you're going to be tested by the state. But when you go to a department, it's going to be very different. So the expectations once you get there is going to be a lot higher, and you're going to be able to put this on your shoulder, and that's cool. We've actually showed shoulder carries and stuff at the college, so it's evolving over the years, and get some good instructors out there that are spending the time with them. But it's the same thing, like you said, like we're spending so much time tying off tools for hoisting where we could be in there doing another rep of a burn or something like that. It's just the constant battle with the curriculum and the amount of hours that need to be spent, getting proficient in a skill that they either can, get them certified or not. If they screw up their tool for hoisting, they don't pass, then they got to take it all over again. So that's why I think a lot of that stuff we spend teaching them the test, teaching them the certification test. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Which is not great, but.
Because there's no raising the ladder like we do in Florida in the California Academy test.
Really? Yeah.
You gotta spike it.
Yeah.
So
we get a couple days like that where people come from out of state and they are going to take the Florida state test. And those are always interesting days, because you hear a lot of like, well, that's not how I learned it. And like, listen, I understand. And these guys have been like on departments for 15 years in Baltimore, places where they fought fire, and they've been a firefighter for a long time. And now they're going through our little state test, and we're like, oh, nope, you got to make sure you put the ladder up a certain way, call dogs or law, you know what I mean? Like just the stuff that, it's kind of silly, but there's got to be a standard. And I think that's kind of where that constant battle is always, at the state level. They got to figure that out. What are we going to create the standard to be, and keep working on it. But
what about diversity? One of the things, again, I think that the mentorship program seems to really address in a very positive, solution-oriented way is, rather than, and let's be completely blunt, we need 200 of this type of person because we didn't hire him before, go find me 200 of that kind of person and bring them to me. Clearly that doesn't work, because in that group you're going to have some people that end up being good firefighters and some people that are going to be awful because you haven't set a bar at all. But you acknowledge that there are underserved communities, and you put in a mentorship program where you remove the barrier to entry as far as, the training itself and the financial cost, and then, scholarships at Fire Academy and people waiting for them on the other side. Now, I think you've really empowered people from those communities to then see if they have what it takes to be a firefighter. And then you end up with more great firefighters that happen to be this color, this gender, this, orientation, whatever. So what have you seen as far as success from that perspective with the program?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. We just remove some barriers. Like, sometimes it's either it's transportation or it's just, the cost of getting into it. It's those barriers that have been removed. You can show up. It doesn't cost them anything. They can hang out and learn just like anybody else. There's no, no tutor, like special tutor that your parent can buy for you. You can show up and you could be, from the richest family in town, and we're still going to make you do the same burpees. We're still going to make you do the same run. Like, it's going to be the same for everybody. And, I think it's that opportunity to do it is what really has created it. And we get a lot of leads from different areas. A lot of it has come from the public school system. So when they created an unfunded mandate that all 11th graders had to learn how to do hands-only CPR. Like, that was something that the governor signed into law. And
excellent.
Yeah, which was a great idea, right? But the high schools were kind of chasing their ass trying to figure out how they're going to train all of their 11th graders to do hands-only CPR. And so, like a lot of communities do, they called the fire service, right? We get service calls all the time where it's like, we don't know what to do. Can you come out and help us? And that's what we did for the schools. We showed up. We taught this hands-only CPR program. And from that, we used it almost as like a introduction to the fire service, because we're like, all right, we taught you the class. Now you got to listen to us for about 5 minutes. We're going to tell you what we do, how you become a firefighter. We have got a program you can show up. So we've kind of jumped on that, and we had so many kids come up to us after those presentations and say, I think I want to do that. So what a great recruitment tool that has been. So unintentionally, now everybody's learning how to do CPR, which is awesome. But also, we're getting to have this like one-on-one conversation, or one-on a whole freaking gymnasium, but it's working, and they're showing up. It's not easy. So all the guys that are doing that, God bless them, because if you've ever tried to teach a big group of high schoolers, it's not easy. They don't pay attention. Everybody's trying to be funny, but it's a really good way to kind of get in front of them. And we've also been to job fairs. We've been to career things. And so we kind of jumped on all of those little places where these young people are that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, and been there to talk to them, which is crazy because that's what happened at Bellevue High School all those years ago. Those guys showed up and they said, hey, you want to be a firefighter? So I'm, recycling what they did, and it's been great to give back in that way. And I sign up anytime I can to go out and do the CPR class, even though it's a nightmare. But it works out great to get, new firefighters in. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
You've kind of alluded to your two children, and obviously Olivia as well. When I look at you guys, I feel like you're a family that's making it work, despite some of the challenges that were working against us, as you kind of said about your experience as a young boy with your dad in the fire service.
Yeah.
What are some of the takeaways that you guys have found to maintain that cohesive family unit in this profession?
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, just being married for a long time isn't easy. You know, it's you've got to constantly work on it. We were working on it before I came here, so we had to have a pretty hard conversation about, you know, refocusing on our relationship, because you can get pulled in a lot of directions, and the moment you start doing that, it can definitely weigh on it. So my wife has been really good about identifying those moments when maybe we have kind of let things go a little bit, and then pulling us back together and talk about it. So, you know, and it's crazy because you spend a lot of time, especially when you become an officer, talking about how can we make the crew better, right? How can we make our crew tighter, all of that stuff. Well, all of that same thing works in a marriage, you know? So communication, if communication sucks, the crew doesn't know what to expect from you. If communication sucks in your marriage, you don't know what to expect from your wife or your husband, right? So sometimes those things that we talk about, I have to like take my own advice and then, you know, do that in our relationship. But as a family, I think, you know, intentional time when you have time off, being intentional about how you spend that time is super important. So we've tried to figure out when we're going to do family trips, and, you know, take that time off. Everything goes off, and you go on the trip. I will tell you, in different parts of the department is easier to do that than other ones. You know, so when I was working in fire prevention, there's only a few fire inspectors and one fire marshal. And when you have a city that is going nonstop, there's always someone who has a question, and that phone does not stop ringing, you know? So you'll have either it's a fire protection engineer call in, or a contractor who needs an inspection and stuff like that. And, you know, that can really get in the way of your time with the family, because yeah, you can turn the phone off, but you're going to have a ton of messages, and, you know, you're going to have to pick up where you left off that next day, and it gets crazy. So, you know, depending on what part of the fire department you are, you don't always have that. Like right now, I'm at Station 3 on Ladder 3. I'm not working today, but there is an officer on that truck. He's taking care of everything. So I'm back in my mind, you know, I might have a few things that I got to follow up on, but the fact that he's there taking care of it, or if I take a day off and my driver steps up and he's riding in my spot, it's, you know, it's not the same as like when you're in administration, or you're in one of these smaller divisions where it's only one person doing the job. So that definitely affects your work-life balance, as they talk about, you know, and as a family, we had to work through that. You know, my wife and I definitely had times where she sat down and had to have a pretty, you know, hard conversation with me, like, hey, this is who you are. This is what you do. This is not who you are, right? So at the end of the day, when my time is up at the fire department, I still have to be a father and a husband, and sometimes, you know, having a good wife will check you on that. So that's important.
What is her perspective on the work week conversation, being the spouse that's at home with the kids when you're away?
Yeah. So it's been tough. It's been tough on her. And, you know, she, for some time I was on call. I was like the on-call fire investigator. So we would have a fire, and my phone would ring, and it would freak her out. Like, she is not good about getting woken up. So the phone would go off, and I'd pick it up as quick as I could, you know, and, hey, they're requesting an investigator to come out to the scene. Here's the address. And, you know, I was kind of used to that. I had already kind of grown up that way of being, you know, going on calls at night. But man, it messed her up bad. Like, she would be messed up for like 2 days after that one call out that I had, you know, and all she had to do was wake up for a second and then go. So she experienced that a little bit. And, you know, that, you know, we have that conversation. She's like, I could never do that job because I just can't rebound like you do. And even now we'll have bad nights at the station and I'll have to come home and get a little bit of rest. And she's been awesome about that. You know, she's been able to like, she knows if she comes home and the door's shut in the room and I've got it darkened down, then it probably wasn't a good night. And she kind of does her thing and tries to be quiet and let me get some rest. But it sucks, you know, it sucks to put that burden on. We have plans today and now I need to rest for a couple hours because the night was brutal. And I know if I don't, then I'm just going to be miserable to be around, you know, and she can tell, she knows there's been times where she told me like, hey, you need to just go lay down and rest because I'm short with her. Or, you know, another thing that happens like crazy. And I think you've talked with, you know, the smart people about this, but, you get off shift and you're exhausted because you had a bad night and all I want to do is eat shit, like bad food. Like I want like carbs and nasty stuff that I probably shouldn't eat. So then I'm scarfing that down and that doesn't make me much, you know, nice to be around either. Cause now I'm like, just, it's brutal, man. Like the night work is, and as you get older, I think it just affects you even more. So I'm seeing this as a, you know, I'm 45 now, and in firefighter years, that's, you know, probably double a normal person after a lifetime of working shift work and on call and all of that stuff. I mean, it just, it wears you down. I don't bounce back as good as I used to. I would be able to kind of get off shift and I would go work my second job. And I can't imagine doing that now. Now I try to like schedule my fire college days after a good night's, after not my day after my shift, but the next shift, so that I've gotten full night's sleep. I can go out there. I can make sure that I'm, you know, providing being the best instructor as I can for those kids. Cause otherwise I'm just kind of dazed the whole day. And then God forbid we have like a burn day or something like that. And now I'm exhausted and I'm hot and that drive home is just not a good thing. So, but yeah, the family life as a firefighter is definitely something that you got to make sure you got the right person that you're with to deal with that, because I don't think it's fair to do that just to everybody. And we had Lacanata, Joe Lacanata. You've met him before, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's been on the show.
Yeah. Oh, great. He's awesome. And, you know, I've spent some time talking to him, and, you know, he always helps me to kind of get back to center sometimes when we have conversations. But we did a panel, and it was a firefighter and their spouse panel at the church one time. And that was really good because I enjoyed hearing the stuff that my wife said. Like we didn't plan anything out. So she was just kind of talking off the hip, and some of her experiences with it was interesting. And, you know, some of the other wives, how they said, you know, you just, it's almost like you got somebody in your house that shows up and he's just a shell of himself until he can kind of recover from it. So yeah, it's sad that that's the reality, but it is, you know, it is how we've set this system up right now. So hopefully people like yourself and, you know, the ones that are working hard on getting this stuff changed, they've identified that and we can see those changes going forward. You know, I've been a big advocate for the 24/72 schedule, and that's kind of one of the reasons is I understand that first day that you get off shift is not really much of a day off. You know, you already are getting out of the station. By the time you get out of there, it's 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you're getting back to the house. And, you know, if you lay down and try to catch up with some sleep now, it's the afternoon. And even after that, you're still just in a bit of a daze, you know, and then, so you got that next day. Thank God for that next day, you know. It would be nice to have one more after that so you can kind of live life as a normal person. But
well, yeah. This is what I, you know, try and get people to understand. And again, full transparency, I didn't understand this till about, 9 years ago when I started this. It's pretty much why I started this, listening to Kirk Parsley, a Navy SEAL, talking about the same thing with his SEALs and him finding the sleep medicine and going, oh shit, there's no wonder that my Uber athlete's blood work looks like an 80-year-old woman because we're training at night. It's the sleep deprivation and why they're all on Ambien. But when you look at the way that we talk, we work 1 day on, 2 days off. Well, 24 hours is not 1 day's work. 8 hours with a 1 hour lunch is 1 day's work.
Yeah.
So we work 3 days on, 1 day off.
Yeah.
So, and if you think about your third of those 8 hours is from midnight till 8 a.m. shift change, that's not a day off. You just worked 8 hours. So stop calling that a day off. Your only day off is that one, the next day.
Yeah.
So as a slide I did when I did a presentation for the FPF, and then St. John's County, who, bless them, they are fighting so hard.
Yeah,
but
watching that, yeah.
I believe there is a certain person wearing bugles that's standing in the way of the betterment of an entire fire department and the citizens of their county. But one of the slides I say, all right, so how many days a year do you think that a civilian works with an 8-hour day, 5 days a week? And it's something like 264 days, I think it is. I was like, all right, now 24/48, how many days a year do you think we work? And people are guessing, I don't know, 280, 300. And I hit the button and it's 363 days a year. So when you do the math, we have 1 day off a year.
Right.
If you're doing an 8-hour day every day.
Yeah.
So this is what we have to understand, is the way that we've been talking, 1 day on, 2 days off. I only work 10 days a month. No, you don't. You work 30 days a month.
Yeah.
If every 24 is 3 8-hour days, you work 30 days a month. This is why those two don't compute. I'm supposed to have a great schedule. I feel like shit. My marriage is failing. There's a reason. It's maths. Back to high school math. This is the basic addition that we're missing.
Yeah.
While we're being taught complex college algebra. So, when we kind of realize, okay, well then why are we not working the same hours as the chief, as the baker, as the candlestick maker, but we're the ones that you're calling on your worst day.
Yeah.
It goes back to that. And then when you look at the relationships, of course, and then this is what kills me when people go, oh yeah, did you hear about so-and-so killed himself? Yeah, but they were going through a divorce. Negating the fact that they were also a 15-year firefighter. And you don't think that maybe what we've just talked about was a massive contributing factor of why that marriage failed in the first place?
Oh, sure.
So when we debunk these myths of we're supposed to have this great schedule, or it's weak to want more time off, newsflash, if you're not resting, you're a shittier firefighter. So stop beating your chest with your leather helmet and your big mustache, thinking that you're Billy Badass. You're not, if you're not fighting for an environment that creates rest and recovery like your favorite athletes get all the time. So if we really want to make a difference, and I've said this many times, like at the front door, when we're told, you wait 10 years from now, you're on your third marriage and have an alcohol problem, that's not fucking funny.
No.
There's nothing funny about it. And if Publix said that at the orientation, you'd turn around and you'd walk out.
Yeah.
So the way that we fix it, and there are other things as well, but just like you said, 24 hours away from your family, you kissed your loved ones, you go serve complete strangers, you risk your life, and then 2 days off, 72-hour period. So the first day you've already worked, so you've got 2 days off in between to be quality time with your family, to attend your kids' events, to be romantic with your wife or your husband.
Right.
And then you go back and you're rested, you're recovered, you have, I'm all about fitness standards too. You've recovered as far as physically, and now you can be a kick-ass firefighter paramedic for another 24 hours.
100%. And so the first time I ever heard that was from you. Like I heard you talk about it. I think it was a post that you made or something like that. And you were explaining the 3 8-hour workdays in one 24-hour shift. And I have used that since you've put that out. Every time I talk to the mentorship, every time I talk to somebody about the schedule, I say we work a 24-hour shift and then we have 2 days off. But let me explain this to you a little bit farther. And it's been a great tool to kind of help them to understand. And for me too, I never really thought about it that way until you said it. And it really is a great way, because we even talked about it one day at the station. We're like, starting our second work day now. We're going into our second work day. And then when we're going into the nighttime, it's like, all right, now we're starting our third work day into this thing. And it really is, when you think about it that way, it doesn't sound as great, right? And I think a lot of times we try to sugarcoat stuff because our mission is to get people in the door. But they need to understand the reality that what we're asking them to do, is a little bit more than just work one day and have 2 days off and work 10 days a week. It's definitely much different than that. And then when you look at the rest of the city, you know, the cities themselves are facing the same challenges that the fire service is, right? Trying to get people into positions. So what are they doing? They're making work schedules much, much more attractive. So they're giving them half days on Fridays, and they're reducing their overall work hours from 40 to whatever it is now. You know what I'm saying? So that is, you know, another way that they're doing that. They're being competitive that way. And I think the fire service just has to understand that it's the same thing. And, you know, over the last couple of years of us having these conversations, I think we're getting to a place where we're like, listen, there's two different conversations here. There's a conversation about what our work schedule is, and then there's a conversation about pay and benefits, and they shouldn't be in the same conversation, right? So we talk about this in one spot, and then we'll talk about what the pay is in another spot. But I think a lot of departments are facing this situation where when they go into contract negotiations, they feel like if they get the schedule that they're hearing everybody go to with the 24/72, then they're not going to get the money. Right. And I think, was it Orlando? Did you just see Orlando signed a
they just
big
chased
contract?
money from what I understand.
Yeah. So they got a really big raise, but they didn't go to the schedule, which I think was a big loss for, you know, the Florida Fire Service, especially their size and their influence.
That's why I didn't share it, because I was just like, oh, what's to celebrate? You chased money again.
Yeah.
At the expense of the betterment of your fire department.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Right. And so how much longer will that last? You know, that might get a few more people in the door, but I think when we have these conversations with the younger firefighters, a lot of them, or most of them, are wanting more time off. They're smart enough now. They're well informed about how important that work-life balance is and getting that time. Just last night we had a union meeting, and afterwards most of the younger group came up and said, so is 24/72 completely off the table? And, you know, I said, no, you guys are the next 25, 30 years of this department. If that's what you want, that's the power of the union, is you tell them that this is what we're going to negotiate. We don't want to hear anything else. You know, a lot of times, you know, senior guys are very influential, so they can bully people into kind of what they want in some contracts, but it's always in the firefighters' numbers. You know, it's always in their favor.
Well, this is what's crazy. I'll kind of give you a few devil's advocate things that I get. Firstly, you know, are we gonna get a pay cut because the hours are going down? I'm like, no. When you went to training that time, did they give you a pay cut? No, they adjusted your hourly rate because your salary is your salary. That is what happened. Worst case, I mean, you know, Pasco County, they got a pay raise and 24/72 simultaneously.
Wow.
Great union, great relationships with their people, with their city or their county in that particular example. You know, Boynton Beach is another one there. That example was their chief and some of the other, you know, fire plugs in that department pushing it. Plano, I just had their former chief turned deputy city manager, Plano, Texas. They're the first department in Texas. Yeah. They were coming at him initially with the 4896. He said, there's no way in hell you guys are doing 48 hours straight. That's insanity. Did research, ironically found the podcast, because if you Google 24/72, you know, it's the thing about the only thing that comes up. Yeah, because no one else is, there's no research, there's no one, you know, talking about it. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm saying, why is there not more out there? He brought it to them within a single day. They had sat down, hashed it out, and did this four-year plan. Yeah. First in Texas.
Great interview.
So, and it was amazing. And that's the thing. I've got people from all these departments talking about it. And in Dixon, for example, I've done 2 now. And he's like, here's where we're at. You know, we filled all the spots. We're ready to go in January. The overtime has gone to basically 0. And then again, so now the money point of view, people freak out. Well, now you've got this hourly rate that's increased because you're working 42 hours a week. So every single hour of overtime that you do work, let's say the kind of overtime that would be healthy. All right, there's a parade downtown. They're putting EMS. Okay, it's an 8-hour shift. Yeah. Every one of those hours, you're getting paid at a higher rate now.
Yes.
When you add a D shift, that creates huge promotional opportunities. So if you were wanting to promote, there's just a bunch of spots that opened up on 3 shifts that you can now start vying for. So the money is there with the 24/72, and it's efficient. Like, for the same small amount of hours, you can make a lot more money.
Yeah.
And then as you save your city and county money, because of this overtime goes away, because we should never use overtime as a staffing model. That's just such a spit in the face for every firefighter. Now you can go back and, 3 years later and say, hey, we made all of that overtime go away. Now we would like to have, because now the work week is where it should be. Now we can talk about, I would be all about fitness standards too. Now we've made a healthier work week. We're going to put these in and, not fire everyone the day after they go in, but have an on-ramp that everyone needs to be here because we take health seriously. Being obese as a firefighter is a death sentence. So let's address that because we care about our people. But yeah, now you can say, all right, we want, 888 over 3 years because we've saved you this money. There is the money that we've saved. You can't say you don't have the money because we literally created the money for the next pay raise. So to say that you want money over the 24/72 again is just ignorant. And it just shows that you really haven't even cared enough to go into Google and type in 24/72 because the real experts on my show will explain all of this and then the lived experience from these departments. So if you're saying, we'll just keep working our people into the ground and watch the recruitment crisis get worse, because newsflash, it hasn't flattened out. It's still nosediving, but you get an extra $100 in your paycheck. What kind of a win is that really?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that the raises they don't last very long.
No.
It increases morale for a minute, increases your chances of picking up somebody. But at the end of the day, it's, when we're doing this hiring, we're seeing people say the reason why they're coming to the department. It's a question that we ask during the hiring board. And most of the time it's because they really had a good experience with somebody at the fire college. And a lot of our people are instructors at the fire college. So of the things that have brought us the most people from the fire college, it has been the fire college.
Yeah, other people.
Right, it's the people. So people stay for thing. So, but, all of that, all of the ones that are new and in the department, they're looking for that schedule change. So they're educated. It's the best time and the worst time, right? So it used to be you would only hear this from something you read in fire engineering. Now it's on everybody's device as fast as it comes out. When the Plano thing went out, you dropped it right away, and people are seeing this instantaneous, and it's like it's getting momentum, and you see departments sharing that. The people that are in favor of it, they'll see it and they'll share it now. So now it's just this momentum that's behind this thing that's needs to happen. So yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned about bringing your crew and one of the mentor young men being in your crew now. I was blown away how well they did, because I've had people, and I don't deliberately try and get people to fail in the class, and I'll taper and everything, but it's a tactical athlete class. If you're coming in and you're either trying to get into law enforcement or fire, or you're already wearing that uniform, there's an expectation that you're at a certain point. Now, if you walk in, you're a dispatcher, or your corrections and your deconditioned, whatever it is, 100% will scale down. But there was none of that with your lot.
Yeah.
Like they were throwing those, sandbags and sleds and everything else that we had as well, if not better than anyone else that's been in my class for a long time. So firstly, I'm just going to put that out there. Shout out to your crew. They kicked ass, and
it was
looking forward to seeing them back.
We had a lot of fun. We're actually planning on coming back, and we're excited about it. We're going to bring some people with us this next time. But yeah, and usually we're just kind of chest day guys, chest and arms. That's our go-to workout. But we do need to switch it up every now and then, and it's awesome that we have a place with like what you've created there, where we can go and we can do that, and we can work on that stuff. And we're a young department. We really are. I think a lot of probably departments across the state are in the same boat, right? So all of these people came on, and these young firefighters, they're motivated. I've seen it over the last 25 years. It's gone from we had strong people. Like, they were strong. They worked like, these are Vietnam guys, and they were amazing. You would never question if they could do the job or not. And over the last couple of years, a lot of those guys have retired off. And so we've got this new generation, and people shit on them sometimes. They're like, oh, they're lazy and they don't want to work. And that's not the experience I've had at all. Like, I've seen, people that are motivated to do this job. They want to stay in shape. They spend time going to the gym. They eat really well. And they take it serious, and that crew that day was, most of them were the normal crew there, but there were some that floated in. And I would say that pretty much 90% of our department would be willing to go and do a class like that and give full effort because, we've got a department that takes that stuff serious. And any given shift that I'll work overtime or something like that, most of them will go out there at the workout time and put a workout in. So I'm excited to see that that today's firefighters are taking it as serious as it is, that health is a priority to them. So
I've said this a lot. Of course, I mean, we've all met the entitled young people, and I've met lots of entitled old people too.
Sure.
That exists every culture.
Right.
But, this is one thing I've heard over and over again, and it's said with respect for that group, is that, firstly, the fit firefighter candidates we're getting now are in really good shape because luckily for them, they've come in where CrossFit and mud runs and all these other things are a thing now, even in stations, in departments, which is phenomenal. But then that they, as you alluded to earlier, that they value their physical health, their mental health, their relationships. So that's not them not wanting to work. It's them looking from the outside in some departments and going, wait a second, 56, no Kelly, mandatory overtime. That does not sound like a healthy environment. No, thank you. I'm going to go be a welder. Yeah. But we have an opportunity because a lot of Gen Zs are going into the trades because they're having that same, like we looked at, we talked about, they're looking at college going, 4 years of my life, $60,000 in debt for a piece of paper that doesn't give me a job.
Writing a bunch of stupid essays.
Exactly. Exactly. So they are leaning into the trade. So we have a whole generation that wants to do what we do, but we've got to fix the things that are broken, the working environment. Yeah. So I hate it when people say, oh, kids today, it's because no, you're wrong. It sounds like you're the one with the problem if you're saying shit like that.
Exactly. Yep. There. It's been great to see, this. I'm excited about this next generation. I'm definitely not one of the ones that are saying that we're screwed because I think the complete opposite. And, it's funny because you made me think about a conversation we had the other day at the station. Somebody woke up and like, man, my shit was sleep. Or
there we go.
Yeah. My sleep was shit because they've got all these wearable devices and, they're still getting better every day, but they're conscious of it. You know what I mean? I don't remember that conversation 20 something years ago. Like nobody talked about that, but them getting up now going, whew, man, I got a 3 on my sleep score last night. Like that's cool that they see that stuff, and they're working on it. And even like run clubs and all that stuff now are so popular because people are going away from that we're just going to go out to the bar and get drunk, or we're just going to go to the club. Now people are going to bed early because they know they got to get up at 5 a.m. to go hit the run club. And, that's awesome. We have a run club here that, 300 people showing up, 300 plus people showing up at freaking 5 o'clock in the morning. It blew my mind the first time somebody told me to go out there and check it out. And I've been running for a long time. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go see. And the amount of people that were out there, and they were excited and it was motivating. There was like dude on a blow, what do you call it? Bullhorn. Yeah. And he's like, all right, good morning. Welcome to the run club. I was like, this is awesome, and it's been awesome for us because we've been able to kind of like get together as a group. The firefighters and then also some of the mentorship kids will come out and be out there early in the morning, go for our run and start our day, first thing like that. That's like gives you, it feels like you have so much more day. But what that does on the back end is it's like, all right, we're going to bed early. I'm not messing around. I'm not doom scrolling because I got like 4 o'clock's going to come real fast. So it's awesome that you have healthy habits like that can, inspire a bunch of people, and they've been doing a great job with it. So I want to get you out there one day.
Yeah, I don't do well in the mornings after.
I'll come pick you up.
Years.
Yeah, I'll come pick you up.
No, I will. I can roll out of bed, no problem. Well, speaking of running, the last thing before we go to some closing questions, you don't just run. You've started something that you've been consistent come hell or high water. So what made you even get into running? And talk to me about what you've done over the last 8+ years.
Yeah, so I've always kind of been a runner a little bit off and on. And then back in it was December of 2016, I had one of those running apps, and I was just kind of running that month, right? And just was into it. And I looked back at the end of the month and I saw that I had run every day that month. I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And it was all pretty good distance. Like everything was over a 5K. So I said, all right. So I did that for 1 month. I wonder if I can do it for 2 months. And so of course, next month ran another full month and everything was over the distance of 5K. And I said, I wonder how long I can keep this going. So then, since then, I've been running at least a 5K every day, no matter what. I've done it when I was sick, injured, had the shits, every
the shits were your fastest 5K that
yeah,
day.
It was really bad. Sometimes you got to find the woods, and lost a couple socks that way, but it has been amazing. And so today, before I came, when we recorded this, I did my 3,270th run straight, which is 8 years, 11 months, and 13 days.
Amazing.
So it's been kind of a cool little journey, and I've learned so much more about myself than just what I can do physically. It takes a commitment to get out there every day and do it. It's, again, my poor wife has to deal with that, because when she's trying to make plans, I've got to work on that run. I've got to get my run in for that day. So it's, challenged me in my relationship, but I've say, okay, I organize my day where I can find it. Recently we went on a road trip. Well, last year we went on a road trip up to New York. We were going to, what's the big waterfall up there? Niagara Falls. Yeah, so we're going to Niagara Falls, and we're driving straight through. We're starting in Ocala, and we're driving all the way through. So we drove the entire day, and I had to run at a rest stop. So we're at one of these little rest stops on the side of the road, and I'm just doing loops around it to get my miles in. So I've had to do that before. I've run in a Walmart parking lot when we went to Texas. So kind of getting, these run-ins sometimes become a challenge. But it's been good. It helps me to clear my mind. Like even today's run was really good, because I was trying to think about what we were going to talk about, and it quiets everything down. And to be on that run, to be on task like that, it takes away a lot of the other stuff, and it helps you to think through things. I've come up with some of the best solutions to problems I've been dealing with on a run, because I don't know if it's because of you're just, focused or what it is, but it's definitely helped. I'm not the greatest runner. I'm not the fastest runner. I can't run these ultra mega 200-mile runs. That's not who I am, but I am dedicated to do it every day as long as I'm healthy. And it's been a blessing, because it's helped me to kind of understand how valuable mobility is, right? So the fact that I can get up and I can run, I appreciate that. It's easy to not appreciate that, right? To take it for granted. And I think that, as you think about this thing that you're doing, and then every day you're doing it, and every day you're doing it, it helps you to put it in perspective and think how amazing is it that I can get up and go run for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, something like that. And then, get back and I've accomplished something. So that's been pretty awesome, but it does take some motivating to do. So in that, I've tried to find little things to motivate myself into doing it. One is going different places and running. So spending some time looking at all trails and places where I can find cool running trails to go on. So I've done a lot of the Florida Trail. I've run on a lot of Florida Trail and enjoy being out in nature, and that's been awesome to run. This is an amazing trail system that we have here in Florida. I've run on the Appalachian Trail and a couple different states. Once you come out of Florida, everything is hilly and it's horrible. So I've got to see that. And then also recently, one of the things I've done to kind of keep myself motivated is I've started running in my zone. So one of the things that I've noticed when I was running in these different cities is that the best way to see a city is to run it. Get up early, go run through. I did in Seattle, and it was awesome. I seen all the garbage by the side of the road, and it was quiet. There wasn't a lot of people out there. And it's, that first thing in the morning when the city's starting to come alive and the first light is starting to hit these areas, you see it in a whole different perspective, and it's amazing. So I've really learned to appreciate that. And then I was thinking, what if I did that in my first due? And so I'll just kind of start this area here, and I'll run in my first due, and I'll run down all of these streets. I haven't been on every street in the city. I've been here for 25 years, but I haven't been on every street. Let me do that. And what I've learned from that is, the type of houses that are in that area, the type of alleyways that are there, where streets cross. And some of the biggest things is where streets stop. So, go and work in a territory, you'll know that it'll be, the intersection of 13th Street and 14th Ave. And you would think if you just jump on 13th Street, you'll get right to 14th Ave. But that doesn't always work because they'll put a park in the middle or something like that. And so you see that. You kind of see how the city's grown up over in certain areas. And then just recently I did an area over there by the old train station. So back in there, some industrial spots where they have like fuel depots and just target hazards that if we got something there, it'd be good to know what we're getting ourselves into, and probably a good spot to stage and stuff like that. So you get to see buildings, and you slow down and you figure out how these cross streets work, where the train tracks are, that if you went this way, you're going to get stuck at the train if it's coming. So it really has been something that tied in, my passion for running, and then also my passion for the job. So it's been kind of cool doing that. And it's given me some talking points with my crew, like I could say, hey, the other day I was running over this area here, and there's this crazy warehouse that is set back really far. And if we're going to go this way, let's go ride by it real quick. I want to show you guys this, because you want to share it. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways when I was in prevention. I would see these buildings and I would do all of these walkthroughs and inspections and stuff like that. And it was stuff that I felt like needed to be shared with the rest of the department. And I'm seeing that same thing on some of these runs. So I've got a couple more days where I got to get these runs in. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm hoping that I get it done in the next couple months, and then it's on to the rest of the city, and I'll see if I can run every street in the city of Ocala. That'd be kind of a cool accomplishment, and I probably would see a lot. So I'm probably one day be running by your house here.
It's a nice place to run. There's a nice
I would imagine
3-mile loop right around here.
You know what the craziest thing about when you run in like a concentrated area? So right now, if we said, "Hey James, let's go do 4 miles," right? We'll run out of the neighborhood, we'll go down 200, and we'll go to the Wawa. We'll turn around. That'll get us our 4 miles. It's crazy how many miles you get if you just said, "All right, we're going to run every street in this neighborhood," and it would be like 20 miles, because you go up, you go down. And basically what I'm doing is with my little app, I try to like paint every street, and I'm looking at it like, okay, I got to go back, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to go back and do all this stuff. And I don't know how many miles of roads there is in Ocala, and I'm sure there's a figure somewhere, but I would imagine it is a lot, and anybody in any town can do something like that. And it's cool because a lot of these roads, there's no traffic. So that's the other thing, is you're in here sometimes battling with traffic. And when you're running on these kind of side streets, it's not that bad. So, but yeah, that's kind of a hobby of mine has become.
When were you running in Texas? How long ago?
It was one of my cousin's wedding, and I think he's been married for 5 or 6 years.
Okay, because a Hispanic man running through Texas at the moment, you might end up in an ice van, so it's probably a good time.
Yeah. A little more dangerous than, that would be that'd be something.
All right. Well, no, I think it's phenomenal though. It's funny with the prevention side. I'd be interested to see if there were any kind of career stories there. But we had to do inspections at Anaheim, and one example I remember of how good it was. I mean, you see all these facilities, different, hazards and manufacturing, but there was one where this gentleman who's a scientist kind of did weathering, so he could age your product for you and tell you how long. And I would imagine he's probably not with us anymore. So, but there was someone living within that facility, not legally, but there was a bedroom within that. And then there was a shitload of bees in the back too. So you had all these chemicals and potions. You had a life safety issue, and then you had hives of bees. So if you just got called to that address, you would have no idea. But knowing in that particular situation to bunker up or mask up before you get to the bees, go back, hope that you can cut a door and get to that person if it's not too fully involved, and then get your ass out, you know, or just knowing that that person's done if there's a significant fire there. But you wouldn't know that unless you were in that building. So I'm a huge fan of you know, even the regular firefighters doing some sort of inspection. It can be cursory, but rather than testing hydrants, I mean, that should be a water department job.
Yeah.
Like, that's your hydrant. Make sure it works for us.
Right.
But yeah, going into these businesses and places where, you know, God knows there might be, you know, you go onto the roof of some of these buildings and the AC unit is, you know, tons and tons and tons. Okay, we probably don't want to get under that.
Yeah.
Those are invaluable. So what about when you were in the prevention side? You don't have to name businesses, but were there any places you went into and you're like, Jesus Christ?
There's so many. There's so many in James. And I run into that a couple times too, where there was people living inside buildings where they shouldn't have been living, you know, and had to deal with that. It's kind of a tough gig. You work independently. You lose that crew. That a lot of reason why people get into the fire service, they want to be part of a crew. They want to be part of a team. Inspectors are out there grinding it out, inspection after inspection, by themselves, just kind of dealing with the businesses. So you kind of lose that connection. It's not the most glamorous position in the fire service, but man, is it valuable. And you see so many things like that. One of the really cool things that I was able to do is I left prevention and went into training. So I had all of those like locations in mind where this is a crazy target hazard. Buildings downtown that are over 100 years old that have these really weird stairwells and they shoot out to nowhere. They've got basements, and you know, in Florida we don't think a lot about basements. And
No.
in the historic part of Ocala, there's a ton of basements.
Really?
And I identified a ton of these, and I was like, wow, this is something that the crews need to be aware of. So I was able to kind of transition the stuff that I learned while I was in prevention as a training officer and bring crews through and do these walkthroughs. And, you know, the fun training is when we can put our bunker gear on and do firefighter shit. Like that's fun. But these actual walkthroughs were so valuable because it really gave us an opportunity to talk about how long the stretch was going to be, what type of line we would bring in initially, how we would recon, figure out where the fire is. Because some of these big buildings, you got to really slow down. Like we're so used to these single family residential structures where we show up and just go as fast as we can to put the fire out. That same tactic is not going to work in these big box or these big strip malls or something like that. We got to slow down, figure out exactly what's going on, figure out which one's on fire and know how they connect, get somebody from the facility that knows it. And so we were able, I was able to kind of start a program where we were doing a lot of these walkthroughs at the different target hazards that I identified when I was in prevention. So that was really cool to kind of bring that to the guys, and it all came from that feeling. And I know you probably felt it when you were doing these company level inspections. Like everybody needs to know this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's certain places where you go and you're just like, everybody needs to see this in the department. And it's, you know, either it's an email going out or something like that. But, you know, there's nothing more valuable than actually putting your own eyes on it. So, you know, we were able to do a ton of those. And even now I've been doing crew level inspections with the guys that I'm working with now, and then trying to bring other crews down and go through, you know, our first due area and what's out there. And then even every month it changes. So on my way driving into here to see you, you know, that road that leads into the neighborhood, all of those new apartments are going in.
Oh yeah.
Those are all wood frame construction. They're very low protection. So you've got a complete 3-story apartment complex with wood frame and a small little sprinkler system that's designed to, you know, contain it but not extinguish it.
Can you imagine if they went up at this point where they are now?
Oh man,
we had that in Anaheim, right when I got hired. So when we were in the academy, they just had it, but it's kind of like that big apartment complex, but still in the timber phase, and it raised everything. Everything was gone right across from Angel Stadium at the time. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you've got the exposure. So if one goes up, then they're all going to light up.
Yeah, and they're the most dangerous at this point too, because now none of your stairwells are set up, none of your standpipes are in. Like it's just everything's kind of loose. And if you're going there to fight fire, you know, you're expecting a certain level of the building being stable, and that stability isn't there at this point in the construction phase. And we spent a lot of time kind of working at job sites trying to keep them from catching fire, because, you know, most of the fires that start at a construction site are because of human error. Like somebody's cooking on the job site or they're smoking on the job site. We had a hotel going in right close to the hospitals over there, and there was a fire that started because some homeless people got in there, tried to shelter out of the rain while it was under construction, and luckily it didn't catch all the way, but it did start a fire in one of the rooms, and it was, scary to think about. There's no good way for these crews to fight this fire, and they're coming on scene to something that there's a lot of unknowns. So I know there's a lot of departments right now that don't require their senior officers to go through each department or each division of the fire department. But I always felt like doing it, I feel like that's would be a very important thing for any executive level officer at any department, is to spend time in these different parts of the department, because you learn so much. I was lucky enough to do it because of the way my career fell. But man, the lessons that you come away from being in training, you learn how to schedule a full department going through some type of education, right? So you know how to move trucks around, you know how coverage needs to work, you know how catching people up, all of that stuff. So you work at the high level of the department, getting everybody through something. In prevention, you're working with all of the buildings, and you're having these meetings with construction folks, and you're having these community leaders coming in and going, hey, this guy's a good guy. Like, we really want this business to be here in our city. Like, what can we do? And you're finding solutions to some of these things, because you get, not only are you trying to follow the fire code, but you're kind of trying to figure out what your community wants. And you're kind of the subject matter expert. So now you have to figure out how to make the balance between safety, security. That was a big thing at the schools. They want these schools to be secure for the kids, but by doing that, a lot of times you can make them very unsafe. When
kids are locked in.
Yeah, they want to lock kids in, but that locks them in.
Mm-hmm.
So if fire breaks out, that's not good. So there was a lot of balancing and learning how to navigate that stuff. And the only time really in my career that I got to do that was in fire prevention. So as unattractive as it is for people that are really interested, that love their job as being a firefighter on the line and going to emergency calls, it makes a much more well-rounded person, especially when you get higher up in the ranks and you've got to make decisions that not just affect, your EMS division, but just affects your fire prevention division, your training division, all that stuff. So I know there's some systems where they do that, but I think more of them should look at it, because it really does. There's no substitute for the experience of working in those different divisions. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
Well, we've been chatting for almost 2.5 hours, so I want to be mindful of your time. We both got to go take a class in a little while.
Oh yeah, we got to get out of here.
So, first of the closing questions: Is there a book, or are there books that you love to recommend? It can be related to our conversation today or completely unrelated.
Gosh, so. The one book I've been reading mostly right now is the emergency plan for the airport, because we got a airport inspection going up, so I haven't had much time to read any kind of regular books. So nothing on the book area. I have been trying to read this one about this guy who walked the entire planet. I cannot remember the name of it. I wish I could remember it right now. And I'm a couple chapters in, but basically he decided he was going to walk the entire planet. He started with his dog, and he was pushing a cart, and then it just basically follows his whole journey around the world. But it's an adventure book, a good one. If I can find it, I'll send it to you, and maybe you can put it in the notes or something like that. But it's been a pretty good read. I need to finish it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
What about documentaries, film, television, any of those?
We just watched this documentary, and it happened here. I think it's called Good Neighbor.
I saw it too.
Wow.
Crazy story.
Wow. It's definitely worth watching. It started to become a stand your ground case, and kind of navigated all through that. And it happened right here in Marion County, and it showed kind of the things that our law enforcement brothers and sisters have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, where people are calling 911 and, how that all transpired. But it was pretty interesting.
to me, it was two things. Firstly, seeing how those neighbors were, and I agree with you completely, pretty much every law enforcement officer that you saw through their body cam, I was so impressed by their professionalism, because some of the things that they were called about, and we've all been on those calls, is you're really going to have to take a breath. Like, oh my God, not again. Why are we going back? But then the person who, the murderer in this case, if you want to put it that way, there is no greater example of what happens when you match mental ill health and then divisive politics that created that issue. There is no question in my mind that if it had, and I'm talking about from both sides, a unifying voice in leadership of this country, and then filtering down to, state, city, etc., that person would have believed the things that she did and had that level of prejudice and basically execute one of her neighbors through the door. It was just fucking so clear as day. Like, she was a full-on propaganda dripping, psycho by that point. Yeah. And she was just waiting for that opportunity to do it. Yeah. And so if that's not the poster for enough is enough, we need to stop this divisiveness, this nastiness, this deliberate splitting apart of and pigeonholing certain people and setting them against each other. It was that. Because that should never have happened. And those poor kids, that one scene where he says, "My heart is broken." Yeah. I mean, Becky and I sat on the couch just weeping. Oh, it was, it was tough. It should never have happened. And so, there should be a national conversation after that alone saying, what the fuck are we doing? Yeah. Like, people that, are all Americans are at each other's throats over vaccines or masks or, the left or the right or pro-police, anti-police, and we're just missing the point. Like, those are the freaking slivers of extremism on each side, and it's ripping everyone else apart and creating tragedies like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It was insane to see something like that.
Who responded? Was that Marion Fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it just hit home after you saw, our guys out there dealing with that. And those poor people, it was horrible.
Horrendous. Yeah. Well, next question. Is there a person that you would recommend to come on this podcast as a guest to speak to the first responders, military, and associated professions of the world?
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a guy we work with, and he would be a really good good guest on the show. He's been through quite the journey in his life, but and he's a pretty influential guy at the department, and his name's Dan Pope. I think you might know him. Right? You've met him before.
Yeah, we did jiu-jitsu for a bit together. Actually.
Yeah, and he is I work with him at the department, and he's awesome there. But where he really shines is at the fire college. He has become the type of instructor that has just the ability to connect with these recruits. And I mean, even years and years after they've gone to the college, they still talk about Pappy. And so it's amazing to see him in that element, and his ability just to has how much impact an instructor at just your minimum standards class can have. And I think he would be an awesome one to see how he approaches that and the way that he can, ride that line between somebody that they love to hate, and it would be awesome.
Brilliant.
Yep.
All right. The last question before we make sure everyone knows where to find you. Yep. What do you do to decompress?
So I've been running for 8 years, 11 months. So, yeah, definitely the runs have helped me with that. But I think to keep me sane, I've got a really good partner in my wife who takes me out of my normal element. She gets me away from kind of the fire service, EMS, all of that kind of stuff that we do, and lets me see what they're doing in the arts and kind of the beauty of our arts community and stuff like that. And she's kind of helped me to get involved in that stuff. And it really takes my mind off of some of the shitty stuff that we see, and, shows me that now our community just isn't a bunch of emergency calls. It's, a beautiful place where people make amazing art and get together and enjoy time with each other and listen to good music. So that's been pretty awesome. And that's a good decompression for me.
When we were in medic school, I did a couple of rides with you guys at the Tuscaloosa station years ago.
Hell yeah.
And it was so cool going to the couch sessions with you and Olivia, being in that space now, because obviously you have the new fire station. So that was purchased. And now watching rock bands play while people were doing, was it the rug making, wasn't it?
Yeah, right on.
So it was kind of funny because even though I was only there 3 shifts, I think it was, I could still see exactly, the engines were here and rescue was there. And so, to see what was a fire station, your world, now become Olivia's world, it was kind of a really cool, unique lens that we had.
Yeah. She finds ways to do that all throughout the community. So it's always a good time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for people listening, if they want to reach out to you, follow you, where are the best places online to do that?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Anthony R. Ortiz, and I post kind of videos from my runs and a lot of shit that we do at the fire station. So mostly our training, try not to do anything that would get me in trouble. And then also on Facebook, and that's just Anthony Ortiz, and same thing, kind of just, I think a lot of that is just videos of my wife doing crazy stuff. So if you want to be entertained by an entertainer, it's a good place to see it. So yeah.
And for people listening, the class that I put on, CrossFit Iron Legion, downtown Ocala, 5 p.m. every Monday, free to anyone, first responder, military, dispatch, corrections, etc. So with that being said, I want to thank you so much for driving down here, being so generous with your time. We've been talking for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it was a good catching up with you.
It was. So thank you so much, mate.
All right.